Check your watches, everyone. It's 5:30 p.m. GMT, and that can mean either one of two things. Firstly, it's time to look forward to a terrible Monday ahead, but that's the sad way to look at it. The good way to look at it is that it's time for some racing in the AMX 1 Championship. We're here, folks, with Assetto Corsa action at Zandvoort. It is time to go racing with the 911 GT3 Cup car. My name is Somal Arora, joined by Amir in the commentary box. And Amir, this is a good day to go racing. I mean, Sunday evenings, that's what racing is meant for. And the fact that we can go racing with a car that's as daunting and as fun as 911 GT3 Cup, I think that is the recipe of a really good Sunday.
Absolutely. Baptists be damned on that one. Sunday is always a good opportunity to go racing. And the fact that we're in the Netherlands, where normally MotoGP, we just sidetrack for a second, they normally hold races on Saturdays for the Dutch TT, but nowadays it's all on Sundays, and Grand Prix Sunday for Zandvoort as well for the Dutch Grand Prix. I can't think of a better combination with a good track, very flowing, with a cup car that is known to be quite antsy at times, the way it handles over the curves. So can't wait to see how it goes, Samuel.
Absolutely, and this time out we're not on iRacing to begin with. For the AMX 1 race this time, we are racing on Assetto Corsa, as we normally tend to do every other fortnight. And this makes it quite fun, because in Assetto Corsa Competizione, normally you tend to see GT3 cars, but this time we're going different. And as you mentioned, that cup car, it is so daunting, and to be racing this at Zandvoort, that makes it even trickier, right? Because the curbs here are so big, and if you get on them, that's going to be such an issue. But importantly, there's barely any runoff, which means that it's a real racing circuit with some proper corners that you really have to work hard to pass on. You think that'll be a major challenge for all the drivers here today?
Add that to the fact, yes, it is challenging. And the first thing that greets you when you go off track are the gravel traps. There's a reason why they call it Zandvoort. It literally means Zandvoort in Dutch. So that's the first thing that drivers will meet if they go offline, especially in the second sector coming up from turn 7, 8, and 9. That's where you really see the drivers earn their money today, if they could keep it on the black stuff on the road and avoid disaster, especially in these cars that we're going to go into, the Porsche Cup cars, the 2017 ones. Highly sprung, easy to hit on the curves, and they can jump when you least expect it.
And there is going to be a bit of jumping around to do, because of course you have to gain tons and tons of time by cutting over some of those curves here at Zandvoort. But let's tell you more about this championship and why we are here in the first place. What you're watching right now is going to be the AMX 1 race, and by the way this happens is quite simple. We have races on Tuesday, Saturday and Sunday for AMX 1 and then also AMX 10. But let's talk about AMX 1 firstly, because we've got a very simple format. A 20-minute qualifier followed by a 40-minute race, which has one mandatory pit stop, and there is a big prize pool on offer. Of course, you enter by just paying $1 as a driver, but there's a prize pool of $100 on offer, and the overall season prize pool links up to over $20,000 and some next level sim gear, which is quite a lot to actually earn for what you're paying initially to get into. But that's not all though, because you folks can also join in right away. In fact, we've only got 3 more races left in this championship, and as I mentioned, that's going to be next Tuesday, next Saturday and next Sunday. So 6 more races left to go, and you should rather join in quickly, because the prizes on offer are quite huge, and we should discuss the cash prizes immediately after that. But Season 5 is also going to be beginning in mid-May, and there's something to win for everyone. And the timings are also generally quite favorable, regardless of where you are in the world. For Amir and myself, it's somewhat around late at night, but if you're somewhere in Europe, it's very convenient in the evening, or even better, if you are somewhere in the Americas, it's pretty much early morning for you. So these are in fact the timings for all the races. Similar, 5:50 p.m. GMT, that's the way to go for everyone. And of course, we have a qualifying session before this as well. And what are they fighting for is a big question to ask. Let's answer that. The prize pool per race, $100. Pay $1 to enter, and if you win, you could end up winning $25 in the ACC prize pool. There's a ton to win for everyone, and of course, it descends down as you go lower down the field, with $4 also awarded to the driver who scores the fastest lap. And that is going to be crucial in what is going to be a 40-minute race with one pit stop, because where can you extract the fastest lap? That's going to be a big question. But tons to win for all the drivers all the way through. And let's take a look at what the grid looks like, what the earnings have been like for all the drivers. Remember, we've had so many drivers coming in, coming out of this championship, as you can do as well, folks. And in this championship, Diego Villarreal de Leon has been a star, regardless of whether we're racing on iRacing or ACC. He's normally been better on iRacing, but again, he's been the one who's been the most consistent and has taken home $174, and he only paid $25 to enter throughout the entire season. That's the amount of prizes that are on offer if in case you're consistent and you do well. And in the entire season, well, not really the most conventional championship per se. You don't have to be there for every single round. But if you are there for every single round, as we mentioned earlier, there are great prizes to win, courtesy of Next Level Racing and their incredible GT Light Pro rig as well. And in that championship order, we are seeing quite a few close battles somewhere in the mid pack. But our leader seems to be Lois Regnier with 130.5 points. He's the one poised to win this class. And he has the best chance of winning that big rig come the end of the season. Not too long now till we get there. And let's move on to talk about Zandvoort. Why is this circuit so special, Amir? Why do we love this place so much?
Well, why do we love Zandvoort? It's a real driver circuit, to be honest, because despite having one line mostly, apart from an overtaking spot at Tarzanbach, as you can see at the background there, it's been around since 1948. A couple of changes since then, including the reformation project that started around the 90s, about 1999, I was taken, when they tried to make it into the current Grand Prix circuit that we see today. It used to run all the way out in the sand dunes, but we cut it back a bit, truncated slightly, but we still maintain some of the best characteristics, including as the aforementioned Tarzanbach, where you can get really side by side if you want to, coming into turn number 1. Other overtaking spots coming into later in the lap, like for example here at turn 11, 12 at the Hans Erd spot. That's where you can see a lot of the action if someone gets a good run coming out of turn 10. But apart from that, it's really a good driver circuit, and let's see how the Porsche Cup cars follow each other around this really undulating and challenging circuit. And the cars, in the meantime, what we're going to look at here today is the Porsche 911 GT3 Cup car, but this is the previous version, not the current 992 one. This is the 2017 Cup cars. It has more power, slightly more power than the actual GT3s that run in ACC normally that people run. Rear-wheel drive as per usual, but it is more on the stiff side, so the cars can be really quite handful because they use these cars exactly to find the next factory talent to come through its pipeline. So Porsche really banks itself well on the Porsche Cup series, and really then can't wait to see how our drivers will handle these out on track. Oh, okay, so we didn't confirm it is the 992 because in the pictures it was the 911, but oh well. So it is the current 992 version of the GT3 Cup car. Still very technical to drive, but really brings out the best factory drivers from this kind of series of cars.
And you've summed it up so well. It's a proper driver's machine. Everyone knows it to be such a daunting car. And with no traction control, no ABS, you've got to be tiptoeing your way around Zandvoort all the way through to make sure that you firstly survive and then thrive in qualifying. Let's take a quick look at what's going on in this 20-minute session that we've got, which by the way as well is going to be rewarding for all the drivers. Riding on mode right now, we are with Santiago Barrios of Rebellion Autosports as he's trying to warm up his tires and go for one fast run afterwards. But at the top of your timing screens right now, it is Simone Seminara who is leading the field with half a second of a margin over one of his major rivals in Magnani. And now it's interesting actually, because in the last round of this championship, Lorenzo Magnani just popped in randomly, won the race, got the fastest lap and left. He didn't compete in any round of the championship before that, but he's clearly made quite an impact, Amir, and he's here to stay now.
Indeed, and I saw Seminara about a few weeks back when he was doing the GT4. No, it was actually the M235s around Barcelona, and he was fast then as well. So really, a lot of drivers would think, oh, he popped out of nowhere. But probably he is an ACC specialist that really knows what he's doing. So that's why you can see there up at the top of the timing sheets, 5/10 faster than the rest of the field. So again, one to watch out for, especially with next season coming up very soon.
Absolutely. And in this qualifying session, the drivers have got 20 minutes to go out and put in their laps. And that might sound pretty simple, but with Zandvoort, with this circuit being so tricky and with the cup cars being so dicey to manage tire heat and everything as well, it turns out to be an incredibly challenging circuit where the warm-ups have to be critical. And that is what we saw with Santiago Barrios on that last lap. He was aiming to make sure that the cars, especially the tires, were in the right temperature. And now in qualifying, what do you think, Amir, is the key to nailing a lap here? Apart from just all the throttle management, what will the drivers have to nail to make sure that they find themselves towards the top of the grid?
That's a very good question, Somil. And the key point to know is you had to get your entry before the start and finish straight very well, because if you get it wrong, you're going to waste a lot of time even before your lap starts. So you got to get the exit, start up the lap very well. And then the rest of the way, it's just how well you know the car and how well you set it up prior to this. So if you got a skittish car, you just have to fit it like a glove and drive within that pocket where it is just about drivable, but you drive it on the very edge, just tiptoeing around almost with your fingertips, trying to get the car in that little grain on the circuit, the driving line, or rather the racing line, where you just want to keep the car pointing the right direction, not get it over some of the tricky parts like was over here, the grass or the curb hit wrongly. You just have to hit those points absolutely right throughout your entire fast lap. And then once you've done that, you might consider your first lap a banker lap, then you can build the confidence to go into the second hot lap, Somil.
Yeah, I like that you mentioned the word confidence with this particular car, because if you make one error, it can really sop the confidence out of you. As we mentioned early on, it's a proper beast, this one. It's not got more power than the 911 GT3R GT3 machine, but it crucially has no traction control, which means that you've got to drive as if you've got an egg underneath your throttle, which is what all the drivers are doing right now. And with limited aero in comparison to any of the GT3 cars as well, which, remember, most drivers will be racing on the ACC platform. You've really got a package where you've got to be vigilant all the time. And if you make one tiny error, and if you've not got your tongue hanging out of your mouth, that could be it. And look at how hard Lorenzo Magnani is having to work to make the car go fast. You can look at the intensity in his eyes. This is not a car for the beginners, quite clearly. I mean, you'll surely have a lot of fun driving it, but to go fast, you've got to properly balance it out. I mean, Sebastian Vettel used to call his race car Stinky Kali and the likes. This one also deserves to be called that for just how dirty it can get and how it'll snap on you just like that.
And you can see why the best drivers currently in the Porsche factory setup come from. They drove these cars, yes, in previous generations as well, but same principle applies. No driver aids in these cars, and you have to drive literally almost with your fingertips because you do not want to really wrestle the car, otherwise the car starts wrestling you and you will get into a huge predicament. So you gotta treat the car with a lot of respect though. You want to hustle it, but at the same time you do not want to overexert it to cause major misorganization between yourself and the car. So really then, it's just all a matter of being very smooth, very calm, and not overdrive it. As you can see, Jonathan Kweski really was a bit squirrely, all sorts of squirrely coming out of turn number 9 into turn 10, but somehow managed to keep it the right direction. It looks as though he's about to set his first proper lap, so it's a banker for him.
I need 9.5 minutes left to go until we come to the end of this qualifying session, so there's tons and tons of time for everyone to improve. And knowing this Porsche Cup car, knowing how the window to operate the tires can be a bit limited, really got to make sure that the one lap that he set as the banker is a good one, because mistakes will be easy to come by, especially when you look at what's on the outside of that track, the grass, the curbs. Normally, if you take this car on iRacing at Zandvoort, you will be able to use your curbs quite a fair bit, but on Assetto Corsa, it's notoriously worse, Amir. I mean, the car, when it gets on the curbs, especially the ones that you see on the inside of turn 1 or even the ones on the outside right here, that car can bottom out bad, and that is so much lap time lost. And that's not the only place. We've got curbs everywhere at this circuit, especially towards the second half, where they could really bite back.
Absolutely, and especially coming through turn 8 and 9, where the curves over there can really send you into the sand dunes. It's also a point to note that the cars here in ACC, the physics, the way that it's laid out, it's just the uptray of the car, the suspension, when you hit the ground at a certain angle, it will toss you out like a dog that was actually trying to gnaw the bone out of, a stuffed toy, of course. The way that is done, you really have to muscle your way through afterwards, try to keep the car on the road. As Barrios now comes through on Kwiatkowski, who's been struggling a bit here with handling his car, and Barrios likewise nearly runs wide too, so they're gonna engage in a bit of a small battle here in qualifying, which is not what you want to do. You just want to give yourself a bit of space.
All the time you have to leave a space is what Fernando Alonso would say. Well, not really applicable in this case, unfortunately, but still they're both compromising on each other's laps the way things are going right now. And you need that open space, as you rightly mentioned, Amir, to make sure that A, you've got your concentration and focus dialed into the right place, and B, the other person doesn't quite obstruct the lap, because if you see anyone, especially if Barrios just slides the car a little bit, goes off, that could be a tricky one for the driver following him in the background. So lots and lots to watch for. But let's talk a little bit more about the AMX1 Championship and the way it's played out right now. Because in the title order, we're seeing a lot of volatility. Lois Regnier was our leader, as we rightly mentioned earlier on. He's raced 6 races in this particular class. And being the most consistent certainly has its advantages. But as far as I can tell on the timing screen, he's not here today.
Yeah, again, as you mentioned before at the start, you don't necessarily have to join all the races, so you can just pop in and out. But the thing is, on the other games like on iRacing, you can afford to do that because there's plenty of races for you to come by. But with ACC, there's a finite amount of races that you have to join so that you can maintain being in the championship hunt. So for Regnier right now, where he is a little bit out of contention here today, might actually give a chance for Seminara to just wind in and close up to the back of him come season's end. So really then, this is squeaky bum time. Not the best chance to actually leave out any of the races here, especially with points on the line.
Bit of a mistake there from Lorenzo Magnani as he went out on the grass, lost a little bit of momentum, and that qualifying lap probably won't be the best in the world, but at least he's got a good banker as we have 6 minutes left towards the end of this qualifying session. And you're so right about that, because now it means that the margin for error becomes even lesser. And right here, he might not have joined this session because of work or something else or other commitments, whatever it might be, but he certainly would have an eye on what Simone Seminara does, because so far in all the races that he's joined in, he's also been quite a force. But it's also good to see Bruno De Carmo also join this session on the regular in all of the AMX1 races and also the AMX10 races that we've had in this championship quite often. And it's great to see that spirit. Be it iRacing, be it whatever car we do, be it PCRs, GT3s, or GT4s, or whatever it might be, Bruno De Carmo is a mainstay of this championship. And isn't it fantastic, Amir, that drivers are joining us regardless of whether it's iRacing or ACC? I mean, this is the sort of harmony that the sim racing world sort of needs. We don't tend to get online in all the communities, do we?
Yeah, we know that full well, how behind the scenes it can be quite scrappy, especially with some porters. I don't want to name any names, but or sim racing games, but yeah, they could be a bit tribalistic. But as you rightly pointed out, nice to see there's a lot of crossover from drivers who have done a bit of ACC and a bit of iRacing in between. Plus the fact that they can get rewarded handsomely towards the end of the season. So yes, there's a bit of motivating factors, but overall, it's nice to see that there's plenty of specialists from both sides of the divide coming in and unifying them under one umbrella here, racing in the AMX Global Series. So yeah, really nice here, especially guys like Bruno De Carmo. You can see his allegiance, Tony Kanaan Racing. That is a name that's familiar for a lot of IndyCar fans. Regardless of whatever he drives, he is going to be really competitive here. But for now, 1.6 seconds behind Magnani. So that's a good time for the Italian. Really tough to match right now unless Seminara can pull something in the last 4 minutes.
Yep, we need 1 minute 36.957. That is genuinely quite a good lap, especially considering the setups that they've got on this car. I mean, the maximum that I've heard people do with open setups completely after hours and hours and hours of practice is somewhere around the high 1 minute 35, so 35.9596 thereabouts. So this is also a pretty respectful time, knowing how most of these drivers actually race other cars and other sims in their primary time. So this is very interesting. But Bruno De Carmo goes out there and posts a lap time that puts him up into P4. And I want to talk about this transition, Amir, because not a lot of people do both ACC and iRacing. definitely there are major differences, especially in the visuals, especially in the way the cars drive. But under braking, lots of drivers say that the ACC format is completely different to iRacing in that there's not a lot of modulation on the initial braking. It's just that the trail braking that comes in afterwards, once you release the brake, is what makes it so technical on ACC. And for someone like Bruno De Carmo, that might be quite a shift, because yesterday he was literally driving GT4s and iRacing, which have a completely different way of braking. How big must that shift be for him? I mean, it must be day and night, right?
Absolutely. It's basically a difference in style of driving, plus the fact that there's more categories on iRacing. You know, you got prototypes, you got Formula cars. But the general consensus in iRacing is that you don't really brake 100% anyway. You brake about 80%, then you start feathering off or bleeding off the brake to just get the car into the corners. Whereas in ACC, a lot of the cars, even the ones without ABS, you can mash the throttle 100%, but only for just a couple of milliseconds before you start bleeding off. Right here, for example, Seminara coming through. Oh, that is actually quite wild. You can hear the brakes actually locking up, and oh, he's going off onto the gravel. That's the end of his. No, it's not the end of his qualifying. He can still do one more run here, but he got it all crossed up. And again, it all originated from the fact that he tried to come on the brakes a bit late. He came off it 100%, almost after immediately to come to the corner, but he left it a bit too late when in hard. And that's a fine example of if you can flat-foot it completely on an ABS car, you cannot do it in a non-ABS car. So it's important to just get that braking right. As Seminara just found out, he did it the wrong way, driving for, incidentally, Gladius Competitions, a team that just got renamed recently from Ballas. And I know that because I was part of that organization. Still somewhat in it, but it's unfortunate to see that they changed names in that short span of time, as Leo Mora is still sitting in pit lane. Don't think he's coming out anytime soon, but yeah, subtle differences between ACC and iRacing. But key point to note, some principles to apply where you just have to use the bleed off in the braking to get through the corners.
And it must be such a big shift for someone like Bruno De Carmo to make, and the fact that he's still competitive enough says quite something. But I find it interesting that now that we have only 1 minute left in qualifying, there is a clear gulf between the top two, Magnani and Seminara, and the rest of the field, which is interesting because the drivers and the quality that they have, it's a little surprising to see that they've got that much time to gain. But that also tells you how good Lorenzo Magnani has been on this simulator. If you look at his ACC rating, somewhere around the 3000s, which probably isn't the best in the world. They call it as semi-pro. That's the kind of rating that they classify it as. But that's not what matters ultimately. It's just how you compete with the rest of the cars and the rest of the class. And clearly, Magnani knows something about driving this car and this particular sim that nobody else did, because even last time when we were racing on this particular category, he came in, dominated, and left. And that left so many other drivers confused about what is it that this guy has done that we can't potentially do. And clearly, you can't fault the intensity of the man. He's driving like a man possessed, and you can tell from his video camera as well about how he really lives and breathes the car while he's driving it. I mean, I saw his tongue coming out there once as well while he's driving. That's when you know that a driver is really focusing hard.
Yeah, he's doing a bit of Air Jordans there. You know, Michael Jordan, when he slam dunks it in his prime, he sticks his tongue out. So he is trying to channel that inner Jordan here, but he's not taking to the air around the sand dunes. He is trying to actually improve his time, and he is only just a 10th ahead of Seminara. So Seminara then, the two Italians are right in front, only a 10th apart, and Magnani actually just comes in to abort that particular lap. Now, that will mean qualifying has come to an end for the both of them, but I don't know if Seminara is actually still out on track, or he might have actually peeled into the pits before then. No, in fact, he has. So that's the end of qualifying, and it's interesting that the top two will be very competitive. Somil.
You're so right. Only a 10th and a half between the top two as we end the qualifying session for this first AMX1 race. And that is going to be a 40-minute race that's going to be starting in a couple of minutes' time. Remember, mandatory pit stop for all the drivers to make, and it's going to be fun to see when they time it, how does it all happen, and in fact, if they can make it clean as well, because that pit entry, that is a bit of a daunting one, Amir. I wouldn't like to enter there under full green conditions, for sure. Well, we'll get to that in a second, because we need to review the timings of this session. Magnani puts it in with only a 10th and a half and Simone Seminara, but behind Amir. That's where the gap happened big.
Yeah, and the fact that the top two, the gulf of it between first and second to third, is quite high. But unlike what happens in the AMX races on iRacing, we do not have the luxury of reverse grids. So that will mean the top two will have a race of their own, unless of course they actually stuff each other out coming into turn number one. But again, not wishing it upon them, it could happen if they were to not mind each other. But again, we got a good race on our hands here, the top two being that close.
Very quickly before we go racing, hotspots, Amir. What should we watch for? What corners do you think the action could happen primarily? What do you think is going to be the main talking point of this race before we head in?
First corner, obviously Tarzanbach, because it is a tight right-hander 180 that goes around to turn number 2. But again, there's multiple lines you can take through there. The one going high, one going very low, and somehow in between if you can actually just nudge the guy off the track. But the top two will have to be mindful because it is cold brakes and cold tires there, so they do not want to push each other off, otherwise they end up into the gravel trap and go into the path of the other cars that are coming to barge through and take their positions. The other one, turn 11 and 12, that's the hard braking point after turn 10, where it is another prime overtaking spot. The rest of the way, there's not really where you can consider thinking of an overtake, but 11 and 12 is definitely one up there. So really, it's going to be quite tricky if they could get a run here. We are now going into the first heat, Somil.
40 minutes in this heat, one mandatory pit stop to make, and importantly, survival is going to be the main aim for all these drivers. Can they firstly survive this car? One that will absolutely challenge them to the very limit. No traction control, only ABS, and they've got it all to deal with for the next 40 minutes. Now then, drivers are rolling across the final corner. It's going to be a rolling start any moment now. Should be good to go. Lorenzo Magnani leading from Simone Seminara. When will he floor it?
Green light, go.
Green, green, green. Away we go for the first race of the AMX1 category here. Actually, the only race of the AMX1 category today in Assetto Corsa Competizione. It's a decent start for Magnani, and Simone Seminara tries to make something work on the outside. But again, the run just wasn't quite good enough. There is some battling in the background though. Ardapide tries to fend off Bruno De Camo as we head towards turn 3 and 4 for the very, very first time. And as I can tell from my screen right now, there isn't much of a change in position anywhere on the grid, which tells you how good the drivers have been and how disciplined they have been at that start. So as it stands, Lorenzo Magnani leading from the very front, and already Amir, 0.6 of a second within the first second and a half. That is no joke. This guy has floored it and then some.
Yep, but again, you have to remember the cars are not up to temperature yet in tires and in the brakes, so that might be Magnani, who's actually quite good on it to begin with. But let's see what Seminara can do once he gets into his stride, as he has a couple of drivers right behind, including Bruno De Carmo and Ladapide right behind him immediately in vicinities. But apart from that, looks as though every single driver in the race right now are still in it. It was a good start from everybody, and glad to see it was a very clean one as well.
And by the way, if in case you're wondering, what's that familiar name down in P10? Well, it's Evandro Dantas, one of our primary contenders in the AMX 10 Championship as well, who's also made his way here. He was also racing yesterday in this championship, and it's good to see him also make that shift over from iRacing onto Assetto Corsa Competizione, and he's going to be driving the number 995 car. But so far, it hasn't quite been the cleanest of starts for him, as you see him right at the back of the field, chasing all the others. But it's been a very quiet and been a very clean opening lap so far. And interestingly enough, it's not Simone Seminara challenging Lorenzo Magnani, who in fact was only a tenth of a half faster than him in qualifying. It is in fact Lardapide chasing Seminara. He's in fact closer to Seminara than Seminara is to Magnani, and that is quite fun considering the qualifying gaps, as Thomas Lardapide is around a second slower than the top two. So it's fun how using that cold tire and cold track combination, Lardapide is really getting time on the others.
Yeah, but again, wait for the whole thing to warm up. Let's see if Lardapide has the pace. And he has support though in the comment section with Valentin Mata, one of his teammates. All of the Sport Junior team supporting Thomas Lardapide, and looks as though the support is paying off here. He's still arrears behind Simone Seminara. Seminara probably is taking a while to get up to temperature in the tires and the brakes. Oh, looks at that. The tires are actually still slightly not up to scuff yet, but he held it together, still about 1.2 seconds behind. At least he didn't lose 20 seconds if he were to drop it now and go to the back of the field. But a wake-up call nonetheless for Seminara.
And that's the thing with these cars. As much as you're racing against the competition, you're also racing against the car in itself first. And it just cannot be understated about how challenging this thing is to drive. As a rookie, if you step into this car without having any knowledge whatsoever about this thing and you just end up flooring the throttle, hoping for the best like it's a normal GT3 car, well, guess what, my friend? You're going to find yourself on a one-way, all-expenses-paid trip to the barriers, because that is how little traction you will have. And you mentioned tire warming and the way the car behaves. You think that'll change much, Amir, as the race goes on and as the drivers get used to the car? You think as the drivers get more heat, things become easier? Because with this car, I don't think it ever becomes easier, right?
Well, that's case in point because of the way that it's built anyway, especially when it jumps over the curves. But the tire pressures do become a bit important. Unlike in iRacing, where you don't really measure the tire pressures based on the temperature and everything, it is the real tire pressure simulator here in ACC, where if you're actually out of that particular window, you either slip out or you're going to have a puncture. That is how fine line it is with ACC in regards to that particular instance. So that's why I mentioned earlier, brakes, tire temperatures, all important, especially now with the temperatures, by looks of it, getting a little bit hotter. So they have to reduce the pressure a bit so that they could get in that sweet spot. Normally it's about a temperature range between 26 and 27. Centigrade, but PSI, 26 PSI to 27 PSI, and it's all dependent on the Celsius out on track, Somil.
And for the drivers, that's another variable to contend with, apart from the competition, apart from ride heights and all the other things as well. But yes, indeed, it is going to be a one pit stop race, one mandatory pit stop for all the drivers. And in terms of strategy, in terms of when they time it, do you think there'll be any particular pit window in their mind, Amir? Or do you think they'll just normally be thinking, okay, let's just split the race in half. There's no point for us to particularly make any one stint longer or shorter than anything else. Because that would be the conventional way of going about it, right?
Indeed, the halfway point, as you said, is normally the one that's considered the safest. But if the drivers were to be playing a bit risky, they'll try to actually pit at the last possible moments or get the mandatory stop out of the way quickly, because it looks as though there hasn't been a timer that initiates that, okay, pit window's open, now you can go in, so they can go anytime. As it's marked there by the orange number 1 beside the car numbers, that is your mandatory stop marker. So if any driver who has made their pit stops, it will turn green afterwards and they don't have to worry about it. For the drivers who have not done so, they have to go really either the midpoints, as you said, or all the way to the end if they want to play risky, to just get that little nosy number out of the way and just carry on with the race towards the end. But crucially, the guys who actually pit earlier can have a chance to just focus on the race at hand and just get the tires into the groove, but they will run the risk of wearing out towards the end, whereas the guys who run longer will have fresher tires, but they don't probably have enough laps to get it up to prime temperature to do anything about it. So it's a fine line between when and where they want to stop in this race.
And it's interesting you mentioned that, because tire wear can be quite a thing at Zandvoort, where you're pulling in so much lateral loads through all the banked corners, especially turn number 1, which is the exact turn we saw Lorenzo Magnani go through a couple of moments ago. But notice this, it's not the new Zandvoort that we've got on Assetto Corsa Competizione. It's not the crazy speed racer bankings. It's the, can I say, old Zandvoort? It's hard to really call it old Zandvoort now, is it, Amir? Especially when you consider that this was the exact version of the track only 3 years ago. But it's the old-ish Zandvoort. It's sort of nice to have, because at least virtually we can remember and embrace how good that circuit was. But at least that way, we don't get the cars pulling in as much lateral loads as they would on the newer circuit, where the tire wear is just insane. But nevertheless, it is going to be a factor to keep in mind, and as the race goes on, the rubber is just going to be coming on the track, and the marbles are going to be an even bigger factor, which we can already see to a decent degree on the outside of the racing line.
Yeah, I mean, this particular version of Zandvoort actually wasn't the most laser scan accurate version of the track because it was the one that was ported over from AC. I could be wrong in that. They might have actually done a scan of it, but now Kunos have to do an extra job by scanning the brand new Zandvoort, which iRacing has. But take nothing away from the original Zandvoort that we have here. It's still a fun, tricky circuit, but look at that. Really using the out extremities does Saminara, and then someone close onto the grass and into the wall there. Oh, that really is showing that he is pushing, and well, that actually took a bit of the sting out of it as well, isn't it? He will have to regroup now just to get up to the back of Magnani, but 2.2 seconds to the good here, not too bad. At least he didn't lose 20 seconds, as I mentioned earlier, if he were to just whack it into the barriers.
Which is so easy to do when you look at just how close they are all the way through the entire circuit. There's barely any place where you can go over 200 meters without finding a barrier. Even the fastest of corners have the barriers being so close to them, which is what makes Zandvoort so unique and so interesting, because you make a mistake here and this place, I can't for the life of me pronounce the Dutch in this particular word, but it's the Schievelak corner. I try my best, but I really just can't do that. But when you come near this top section of the circuit, can you come again? What was that again?
Yeah, Schievelak. But yeah, the Dutch ain't exactly
Schievelak,
first language. But yeah, we'll try to get it as much as I could. Like for example, Tarzanbach. That literally means Tarzan corner, Bocht in corner.
No, you nailed that. But when you go through that Schievelak section, that's the most amount of runoff that you've got all the way at the circuit. Everywhere else, as you can quite visually see, there's barely any room for any error, and that is why for someone like Thomas Lardapide, any mistake that he makes, especially going on to the curbs and the gravel, is going to be penalized even further, as it has in his case, because he was under a second off all the others. Well, now he's dropped back down to 3.4 seconds behind. What are we seeing here? Is there some sort of timing glitch? Because Lardapide is clearly one lap. That's because all the others haven't quite completed the same lap. So the comment that we had on chat, no, that's purely because Magnani completed the lap a few seconds before all the other drivers. So nobody's about to get lapped just about now. Towards the end, if Magnani is consistently that much faster, well, maybe that might be a different story altogether. But coming back to the barriers, it's never too far off. And even at this turn that we have right here, the Huguenot's box, that is turn 3 normally, a slight miss at the braking, maybe tapping in the ABS a bit too much, and that's it. Your front end will get locked, and sure, the 992 Cup car might have a little bit more damage resistant bodywork, but still it's going to impact your car in the aero quite a lot.
Yeah, and coming through that corner, Hugenholtz corner, a bit of a trivia there. It's actually the name of the designer of Zandvoort in the original era, where he built it all the way back in 1961. John Hugenholtz, who also incidentally designed Suzuka and a circuit that's actually close to where I am right now, Shah Alam Circuit, or Batu Tiga, where it's unfortunately no longer in existence. It's now a housing area, but he designed 3 uniquely different circuits. One you can see is in the sand dunes, the other one is a figure of 8 layout, and the other one, literally, if you look up the map of the circuit and some photos, he literally went bonkers on that one. How that circuit was kind of like a level of extreme, where it's fast, it has technical sections, and it also can be quite deadly at one point, because the circuit was modified because of a fatal accident sometime in the 70s. But tribute to the man, he created 3 different circuits, and all of them have 3 different characters. As we are now seeing, the first pit stops here, Barrios comes first.
And it's that tricky pit entry that has him slowing down all the way down to 45 kilometers per hour. So Santiago Barrios clearly feeling the pressure of the tyres, and he's making his first pit stop rather early with 28 minutes left to go. Now, this is an interesting one, because as we mentioned earlier, conventional wisdom would suggest that you'd ideally like to split your stints up into 2 equal halves and then manage tyre wear across. But this quite clearly means, Amir, that in this second stint that we're going to see right now, he's got to be even more conservative on the tyres and even more conservative in terms of how he turns the car around. And in that middle sector that we're seeing Magnani tackled right now, that is going to be so tough, because when you come across turn 9, turn 10, places where the car really does not want to turn in, but you've got to chuck the front end in the car, that's where the tyres will be screaming badly. And when you've got nothing left at the end, that is not a condition that I'd like to drive a car in. So it's going to be especially tough for Barrios right now.
Yeah, it's very early in the stint. In fact, he's only just 13 minutes into the race. So really then, he's going to have to watch out his tyres towards the end, as you said. But in ACC, you don't have to worry about that, because they can last a whole stint, even in the Cup cars where they're notoriously quite jumpy and have a lot of lateral load. But it takes the temperature away early, and now he has to actually go back into that heat cycle to get back onto the track and try to regain that lost time in the pits. As in fact, you can see Barrios now, his indicator turns green, so that means that he did not get a new fresh set of boots. He instead went onto the same ones that he had at the start of the race. Now he has to go back for a heat cycle to chase up the rest of the field, as Nadales comes in from P5.
Interesting choice there by Barrios, just going on the same set of tyres and then carrying on. And this will also mean an interesting break in concentration for him as well, as he gets to relax a little bit with that one pit stop, reset his mind, reset everything that was going on, and then get to focusing again. And even that can be a bit of a tactical tool, because when you're at Zandvoort and there's barely any straight, I mean, the longest straight that you've got is the front stretch, which is so short. I mean, barely 600-700 odd meters, which is hardly anything in these highly powerful Cup cars. But once you're going down there, there's hardly any breathing room for you, because you're constantly being attacked by a barrage of corners left, right and center. So that one pit stop just can also offer a bit of breathing space for you, where you can just go in the pit lane, reset your mind, take a short breath. Not enough for you to drink some water, because that pit lane is a bit too short for that.
Or you have a problem like Alejandro Nadales, that he actually gets a stop and go for missing his marks. And in this case, he actually overshot the pit lane line for the pit limiter, and now he will definitely have to put this race into the bin, because stop and go 30 seconds in a sprint race, that's just the GG for him.
That is going to be game over for Nadales right now as it stands. Such a minute error to make, stopping in the right pit box with these cars, with the brakes that they've got. It is something that they've got to time perfectly. And that's just one potential error among many hundreds and thousands that you can make with this car that could be on offer. And it also is going to be a reminder for all the other drivers to be calmer when you make that pit stop. Because with the brakes of this car, right, when you come into the pit lane as well, it's so easy to mistime it. You could just end up maybe taking it for granted, maybe end up braking a bit too late, and that's probably what happened to Nadales right there. And I don't think he's missed it by a lot. It's just one tiny error, and that's it. Now let's watch what are is that a replay of Nadales? No, that is him serving.
No, he's coming
penalty, and hopefully
he's serving it. Yeah, and the fact that he actually well, actually, what I meant is that he missed the pit limiter line. That's what I meant by him missing his marks. I think he went in, overshot it completely, and only turned the pit limiter on halfway through the pit lane or afterwards, and then got a penalty. So this is not served by the stewards, it is by the game itself. So for Nadales, that was unfortunately the equivalent of an own goal, and has to really pay the price for that one. So he is well and truly out of contention for what was a top 5 finish. Now he has to actually try and prevent himself from finishing last.
The margins just so fine with this car and with this track. The drivers have got to be on the top of their game everywhere, be it on the track or, as Nadales has proven right now, also in the pit lane. He's come back out and has rejoined P9, only ahead of Evandro Dantas. But it's weird what's happening with Dantas this race, actually. He's just lingering somewhere around at P10, not having the best of days, even though he's been one of our most consistent competitors in this AMX championship. So it's weird to see him be where he is right now. Maybe just not used to the way of braking in this particular the very top, because Renzo Magnani has been... Sorry, you were saying?
Yeah, I was about to say that Dantas even came in with the wrong car prior to that. He meant to come with the Porsche Cup car, but he ended up in the Super Trofeo Lamborghini. So that if you say if he was having a half day, it was really having an off day, wasn't he?
Yup. Yep, when it rains, it pours for you, and that's what's clearly happening with Dantas. At least he's in the right session now with the right car, because initially when we looked at the timing screen, that was a bit confusing to see a Lamborghini and a Porsche, and that was like, what's happening with him right now? Has he got everything right? But luckily that is sorted, and he is out here to compete for the prize money that we have on offer. But let's talk about Magnani for a second right now. He's clearly not driving with the cleanest of laps. For sure, he's getting off the track limits here and there, pushing the limits of the car, pushing the limits of the track, and just trying to extract as much pace as possible by going to the extreme limits of the circuit. But clearly, this form of driving is working. It might be risky, for sure. It might be one that can be potentially accident-prone if you have one tiny loss of concentration. But if you're someone like Lorenzo Magnani, and if you've got that much talent underneath you, I don't think that's going to be a problem, right?
Certainly, but to relate back to your point about the track limits, it is actually not possible to cut the corner that much in Zandvoort. In fact, I think it's the least stringent among all the circuits in ACC in regards to track limits. So you won't get that kind of 5 seconds, 10 seconds added onto your race time, or a drive-through for cutting the circuit. It's just that it's the circuit itself that actually proves to be quite difficult to drive on, where the fine margins of error can really come bite you in the blink of an eye. So Magnani then, he's doing his best here to drive as hard as he could, but it looks almost effortless at times. But then he could also be ragged as well, trying to extract a lot of lap time coming through certain areas where it could get really dicey.
And this is one of those. Watch how hard he chucked that car into the Hans Ernst Bock, that chicane that he just saw a couple of seconds ago. And watch, rather if you just want to just go back 5-10 seconds, just see how much his rear end snapped when he did that. It is a risky form of drive, for sure. It can be smoother, but looking at the grid, I don't think you can be faster, because Magnani has been a class apart, setting in the fastest lap as well. That will also give him a few extra dollars in the bag. For someone like Seminara, his task is cut out. For him, it's just a matter of doing the best he can and surviving, because with the sort of pace that Magnani has, it'll need quite a break and quite a mistake for him to drop firstly 5 seconds and then a position, because at a circuit like Zandvoort, losing a position is also so tricky with so limited lines there to pass. But let's get to that in a second, as Thomas Lardapide is also making his pit stop from P3. Has he timed his pit limiter correctly? It seems like he has. And his pit box also seems to be okay. So that's Lardapide coming in for his pit stop precisely with 15 seconds done from the halfway mark. So he's going for the normal strategy, the more conventional one. But interestingly, the leaders are not.
Yeah, the vanilla strategy, we can call it, because that's the in-between of everything, the most novel of the lot. He doesn't have to be too aggressive or too conservative. He's already in that little Goldilocks spot in the strategy. But the thing is, he'll also have the same way as he has before. So nothing will change unless he gets really on to the job of chipping away at the advantage of the guys in that top 4. As we had a bit of a yellow flag there for a second. Not sure who that was. It might have been Evandro Dantas, who's now in the pits to serve his mandatory stop. About half the field done, half the field left to go here, with half the race gone and half the race left to go. Somil, we're really coming into the window where drivers are trying to just outwit each other in terms of strategies.
I don't think Evandro Dantas is pitting. Quite clearly, I think he has some issue. Maybe that's the reason why we have that yellow flag, as you mentioned, because that's an awfully long time to be in the pit lane of Zandvoort, unless your Valtteri Bottas and your front wheel nut just does not come off. That's absurd. Dantas clearly having a technical issue there. He's waiting an awfully long time, and yeah, it'll be interesting to see if we can speak to him after that to understand what exactly went wrong. Well, we have word from Valentin Mata in the chat, and he said that we stopped in that lap because we had 2 lap cars in front, so we didn't want to lose more time, which is also a very interesting ploy, because as we discussed earlier, Zandvoort being a very old school circuit, one that John Huguenots has designed, he normally doesn't quite leave a lot of space for you to pass around the outside, and at Zandvoort there are barely any places to do so. Turn 1 if you're really gutsy, but that outside line just does not have enough banking for you to carry enough speed. So when a lap car comes around, that is doom. basically, because where else can they move? The slower lines has got tons of rubber and tons of marbles on it existing, so that is not going to work out for anyone, and there's no natural way for you to pass unless the lap car slows down. So what's the best way to go about it? Just make a pit stop when you see 2 lap cars in front of you. Sounds smart, right? I think that's the most efficient way to go about it.
And plus it's an undercut here, so Latifi actually has done that pit stop here, so he is standing with a good chance to be on the podium. In fact, he, among that top 5, is the only one that has pitted, and he's only about 2 seconds behind Johan, so that actually will serve him quite well here. And let's see what the Cardinal will do come his pit stop time. But Latifi is looking in pretty good shape here. So looking at Jurgen Tuleski behind Leo Mora. Oh, that's not a way to take it. You can hear the momentum was not there, and it slaps on the side of his chair, knowing that, well, that's the kind of driving that he did not want, and he has to mop it up here in the next couple of corners if he was to stand any chance of still staying up to the back of Mora.
So what exactly went wrong there? Was it just a case of him carrying a bit too much speed, something that most drivers can tend to do in this car?
That and the fact that in ACC a slide can actually cost a lot of time, given the fact that that's the way the physics engine works. It is more sympathetic nowadays, if you can say like that, because you don't have to really slide the car, worry about sliding the car and losing time. You can get away with that now, but you do not want to do that often because it will bleed a lot of time there, and that's what happened to Kureski when he was chasing up Mora. But having said that, he's recovered quite well here to stay within or just above a second behind the Canadian.
In the meantime, Herbert Johans has made his mandatory pit stop for the Racing Dragon team, and he's also staying an awful long time. Actually, it seemed like he just kicked Evandro Dantas out of there from that very pit stop, because the moment he came in and tapped his car, that's when Dantas left the pit lane. So I find it weird what exactly is going on here. But even Johans is staying in the pit box for an awfully long time. What could be
might be a full cycle
here, potentially? Might be a full cycle, yeah.
It could be a full service. Yeah, it could be a full service, because in these kind of sprint races, all you need to do is just come in, fill a liter of fuel, and go out. It looks as though Johans actually went for full service, and now he gets a drive-through for actually speeding in the pit lane. So he's another one who has also missed his marks.
It can happen to the best of the very best, and Herbert Johans was running very closely in the top 5 and top 6 of this race. Well, he now have to lose that good result and serve a drive-through penalty, and on top of that, his car is sliding around, his tires are not in the right temperature, and then he's got to go through another run of the pit lane and then make sure his tires are warmed up even further after that because of his mistake of overspeeding in the pit lane. Well, we have people in the chat hoping for a stop-and-go penalty for Magnani, where it seems like everyone apart from him is getting a penalty left, right and centre. But importantly, as we mentioned earlier, this is a sign you just can't be complacent. Even if you might be running so comfortably in the top 5 like Herbert Johans was, that does not mean that your pit stop will be plain sailing, and that is a risk that every driver runs, including the likes of Magnani and Seminara, who at this stage now, mind-bogglingly, are well away from the field. Magnani with almost an 8.5 second gap to Seminara, the same driver who he was only a 10.5 faster than in qualifying. How has he done that so consistently? I mean, over the course of 25 odd minutes, that takes some doing.
Absolutely. It really shows how well he got the car fit like a glove from the get-go, as we see Herbert Johans coming to the pits to serve his drive-through. To go back to Magnani, he only was about a 10 faster than Seminara in qualifying, but it looks as though he not only prioritized quali pace, he also prioritized race pace, and that's why he got the better Seminara from the get-go, where literally he got the car set up to a T and just ran immediately from the word go. So now Seminara has been chasing shadows here throughout the entire race, but we'll wait until the pit stop comes around. Let's see if Magnani or Seminara might blink and just put the race right on his head.
It ain't done yet until the very end, as we have 13 minutes left to go until the end of this race. Remember, our top 3 are still yet to make their mandatory pit stops. Their gaps to the rest of the field might be highly inflated as a result, But what is not inflated is the gap that Magnani has built up over Seminara, 9 seconds on merit. When they come to the pits, things like timing a pit entry are also going to be a major thing, aren't they, Amir? Because this Zandvoort pit entry, in the Formula 1 era, after 2021, it has become a little simpler. But watch the entry on the right. You've really got to stop there and make sure that the car is in the right position to get in that awkward little entry. And even there are a few tenths of a second here or there that could be gained. And if you end up making a mistake, we all know what could happen. A DTP or a stop-go penalty could be on the menu for you. So, even though Magnani might be leading by a lot, I would still say that the hardest part of the race for him, technically, still could be left.
Yeah, and that entry can be quite awkward. If you're Magnani with a big lead like this, 9.1 seconds, you can afford to just lose a couple of tenths here and there, especially when his pit stop is concerned, because he can still preserve that healthy lead. But what you do not want to do if you're Magnani is to whack it into the barriers on the way into the pit lane and just cause more damage. As you can see, Bruno De Carmo into the pits now. Let's see where he's going to come out in relation to Thomas Latapide when he's going to be circling around the track here. As, let's see, De Carmo comes to the pits. What's it going to be? Is it going to be a short stop where he just adds a liter of fuel? Or is it a full service? It looks as though it might just be a full service. No, it's not. He actually dropped the jacks, car off the jacks. He's ready to go. But where's Latapide? Latapide is actually coming across the finish line now. There he is. He's taking third place.
Thomas Latapide with the undercut has made it work over Bruno De Carmo, but that is only temporary because Bruno De Carmo now won't have the fresh rubber, but he will have a fresher mind because he's just out there coming from a short break. And this will be interesting because now Bruno De Carmo has to do two things. Firstly, warm up the tires. They will be cold. And yes, over the course of a couple of laps, you can end up overheating your tires more than warming it up. But still, with the Bruno De Carmo, with his tires being cold, the peak grip won't be there, which means that the rear end will be sliding in quite like it's Formula Drift instead of a Porsche Cup car, which is going to be a fun challenge for him to watch. But now, there is time for him to gain. Firstly, there is one target. Koyaski is right ahead of him, and there are 3 cars in front, which means that for Bruno De Carmo, it's a lot like challenge mode in any Formula 1 game. Past 3 cars with 10 minutes left to go. Here's your challenge, De Carmo. Make it happen. And there he is, almost bumping into the back of Koyaski ahead of him.
Yeah, but that was very close to nip and tuck as Koyaski actually goes off. He actually went narrow, outbraked himself, and he goes into the gravel trap. So that's one free position out of the way. Now he sets his sights on Barrios and Mora, but it looks as though the both of them in front actually have, or one of them at least, has not made a pit stop. We saw just now Koyaski, he has that orange mark, and that means he has not made his mandatory stop. So is Mora. So only Barrios after this that separates him and Latapide for the podium. As there we go, that's Mora coming in and Koyaski. So now it's just 9/10 of a second between Santiago Barrios and Bruno De Carmo, but Latapide is 16 seconds ahead. So he actually made that undercut work big time. He's well ahead of the guys fighting for fourth.
More and more drivers walking into the pit lane right now to make their mandatory pit stops, and that will just elevate Bruno De Carmo closer to his major rivals, Barrios and eventually Latapide, who got the jump on De Carmo using that smart undercut. With only 9 odd minutes left to go till the end of this race, ladies and gentlemen, we have a proper fight on our hands because Bruno De Carmo is going to be one story to watch, as is going to be Leo Mora. Let's take a look at the gap that he has to Bruno De Carmo now that he's cycled back out, and we should get to see that in a couple of moments' time. But regardless, with only 8.5 minutes left to go, this now opens up the second chapter of this race. How much faster or slower can the drivers be after their pit stops? Have they got their mind in the right place? Because sure, we've been mentioning that it might just be a mental break in concentration for all the drivers who are being thrown at, who've been thrown so many corners one after the other immediately. But that could also mean a negative thing because you just might be in the flow and that flow has to be broken because of a mandatory pit stop. And it could potentially happen that you just don't get back on the same form of momentum after your pit stop, and that could just really kill your race. That is a potential possibility that could also be on the cards for some of the drivers. But I tell you what, one driver who is not facing any drop in momentum is Bruno De Carmo. Now, trying to chase Barrios right in front, and you can tell Barrios' rear end is sliding. His tongue is already out of his mouth. Both the drivers are now concentrating. This is peak battle zone time at Zandvoort.
Yeah, they're going for the Air Jordans here, trying to actually get a slam dunk on one another. But for the time being, it's still even Stevens between both of them because the gaps have been flowing. Sometimes it's just under 0.8 of a second. Now it's slightly over 0.8 of a second. They're coming through this first sector, 0.7. But to go back to your point about coming out of the pits, not having the same pace, it looks as though Staminara may not have had the light. Oh no, actually, they both haven't pitted yet. But the inlet for the both of them, it looks as though Magnani is actually having the upper hand once again, so he can afford to just toast in slowly and head out of the pits. Pit stop cycles, well and truly smelling like roses. But going back to the Carmo and Barrios, this is the closest battle on track right now, and it looks as though the Carmo has the bit between his teeth.
With only 6.5 minutes left to go, Bruno the Carmo has his task cut out. Do one of the hardest things that you can ever do in the world of racing. Pass at Zandvoort. Now, let's add another layer to compound it. Pass at Zandvoort in a 992 Cup car, which is an even trickier car to do things in. Sure, it might not have the aero that a GT3 car might have, which means that dirty air is less of a problem. However, do you think this car has traction in the same way as a GT3 car? No, which means that the outside lines, which are probably the only place where you can actually pass in Zandvoort safely, become even harder. So where can Bruno the Carmo make that move? It's now the perfect time to bring out that legendary Murray Walker code. It's one thing to catch up to someone, it's a totally different ballgame to then go ahead and pass them. Bruno the Carmo is about to teach us exactly what that code means in reality. This will be a fun 5.5 minutes now, Amir.
Indeed. Catching is one thing, passing is another. I think is also one of the other phrases that he loves to use. So, yeah, the late great Murray, how he would love to see battles like this in virtual racing. That will be something to watch as Barrios now negotiates the second sector of this track. Only 0.6 of a second ahead of the Carmo. So the Carmo actually has the pace right now against Barrios. So that early pit stop that Barrios made may eventually actually backfire because the heat cycle that he went through his tires were gone initially, going back to it. But against the Carmo, who only just stopped recently, he's back up the heat cycle, now ready to actually pounce.
So the gap is dipping further and further, and for Santiago Barrios, if you want to look at what a face full of fear and anxiousness looks like, well, just look at him, because he is in peak concentration zone, and for sure he doesn't look that scared, but certainly it will be a thought going at the back of his mind. Got to defend against someone as good as Bruno the Carmo, who, by the way, in yesterday's AMX races was incredible. I mean, of course, taking on so many great drivers like Aaron Vasquez as well. So for him to be shifting to a different sim altogether, to be shifting to a different car altogether within 24 hours and then being competitive against a driver as good as Santiago Barrios, well, that tells you how good of a driver Bruno the Carmo is. But now he's got his task cut out. Now he's in that proper dirty air zone, and you can look at how the car is twitching and being as nervous as it can possibly get. Tires, well, they'll be getting super hot, and now it's all about a cool head. Can the Carmo wait for the right moment? Will that right moment actually appear? Are we seeing internet issues as well compounding this battle in the mix now, Amir?
Yeah, it could be because the South American guys generally sometimes will have a bit of ping, but it won't be too much of a problem because Barrios and the Carmo come from the same geographic area as South America, so it will be just a case of whether or not they can get it done. There's a touch! There goes Barrios, and there goes the Carmo. He was very, very ballsy trying to go on the inside there, but unfortunately, not enough of a gap to come through, and the Barrios is absolutely miffed at that one. He slams his steering wheel. Not that hard, luckily, but you can tell he wasn't pleased by that maneuver there, Sawmill.
It's like trying to put your finger inside a fan and hoping that it'll come out alive. Passing at Zandvoort is just that hard, and the margin for error is barely anything. Touch wood, both cars are alive and okay, and they haven't dropped positions to each other. But that got very messy very, very quickly. This is where the patience comes in handy. This is where Bruno the Carmo really has to evaluate whether it is worth going for that move. And this is where track position is going to be such a major factor. And that's where Lardapide and Barrios really played it smart, because through that undercut, he got that jump on Bruno De Carmo. And for him to make that move now seems next to impossible with barely any lines left open. In the meantime, our leader Magnani has made his pit stop, his mandatory pit stop, and I don't think he's going to go for a full service. Just a short stop most likely for him to get back on the track and to complete a processional race for him at the very top. But let's return our focus back to this battle for P4, because the more you watch it, the more you can tell that Bruno De Carmo is getting even more antsy. He wants this position bad, but he's only got one problem. Just like any couple looking for a room to make out, he's looking for a place to pass, but he barely can find any. What can he do here? Going to awkward lines around the outside, that's not going to work. This is a proper challenge now for De Carmo.
Yeah, a bit of an innuendo there. The racing is getting a bit hard. But let's see if he can slip one on the inside. No, he doesn't. So the fly is not unzipped that time for Barrios. He nearly got caught short there previously. Not there, but previously the last lap where he and Barrios, he and De Carmo went off big time. Luckily though, De Carmo actually played the sportsmanship game and just gave the position back to Barrios. But looks as though he's not going to be charitable this time around as they come up to the start-finish straight. Coming to Tarzanbot. This might be the first evidence of drivers going side by side. Coming through Tarzanbot. It is a classic maneuver here, but it looks as though De Carmo is a bit too far behind to do anything with Barrios, only for this time.
Smart. That is absolutely smart from Santiago Barrios. All he has to do is place his 992 Cup car slap bang in the middle of any corner. And that's it. There's barely anything that Bruno De Carmo can do. He might be driving like a driver driving a train on rails. He's going so fast. His lap times are incredible. His driving style is incredible. That car is on the absolute edge. As we see Seminara also make his pit stop, which will get him to see, which will mostly cycle him back down to P2. We shall keep an eye on that. But coming back to Bruno De Carmo, as we have the timer almost running out, he's got nowhere to go. He is clearly faster. He's tapping the back of Barrios' car, but his only way of passing him would now have to be putting that Porsche into rallycross spec and then hoping for the best on the grass. There's nowhere on the tarmac that Bruno De Carmo can go to get a one up on Barrios, and that might be so frustrating, knowing that you're the faster car, knowing that you've got more pace underneath you, but there's nowhere for you to go. De Carmo, if he could, I think he really would be putting his hair off, wouldn't he, Amir?
Yeah. he is finding that the car is actually wider than a coach in a Delhi subway, I would say. Really, it's quite tough for him to get by right now, as the track welcomes him left and right. He just has nowhere to go. So Barrios, to his credit, has been defending quite cleanly. He has not pulled any histrionics to cause a crash between the both of them. Now he defends. He goes a bit narrow coming through Tarzan box, but he might leave himself open on the inside here if he runs a bit wide, which he doesn't. Hangs onto it, brakes quite well, and that will just serve to frustrate De Carmo even more.
Last lap of this race, so the opportunities are dying down for Bruno De Carmo. You can tell how badly he wants it. He's been knocking on the door quite literally so many times, and that door happens to be the red diffuser of the back of Barrios' car, constantly tapping and touching to remind him, buddy, and now he's lost time. He has lost time. The rear end has slid down. Bruno De Carmo has lost critical time to Barrios, which would mean that the battle for P4 would be done. That is a biggie, because he almost had one chance, maybe a tiny error from Barrios here and there, and that door could still be open. But that one critical error, Amir, that could have sealed it for him.
Ooh, and a second critical error right there. De Carmo actually tries to do the same thing that he did a couple laps ago on Barrios, but Barrios didn't actually budge this time around. And it looks as though the battle between 4th and 5th is done. Meanwhile, up in front, Nanyani and Seminara across the line. 10 seconds between the both of them, but it makes no difference despite Seminara faster in the second phase of this race between the both of them after their stops. Lardapide comes in third. We're looking at the battle for 4th and 5th, but it looks as though it's Barrios who takes it in front of De Carmo, with the rest of the field will be coming through shortly, I'm pretty sure, to finish this race. But what a battle that we have here, and it's still not over. In fact, it's going to be a drag race to the line.
Here we come then. Ice cold from Barrios. He was defending from Bruno De Carmo for his life over the course of the last 10 laps. And sure, he got tapped once, twice, maybe 10, 15 times, and he even slid off once. But nevertheless, Barrios gets that crucial P4 ahead of Bruno De Carmo in a battle that has lit up the beaches of Zandvoort. An incredible race to end the AMX1 ACC class. But your winner, well, it has to be Lorenzo Magnani once again, winning comfortably from Seminara in P2. And that means it's 2 wins in a row for Magnani. He's competed twice, he's won twice in this category. What a dominant drive from him. Never seemed in doubt, did he, Amir?
Absolutely. And for the rest of the field, then it's just ominous, isn't it? If he was to come back again, he could do the same curb stomp when he comes back. But you can see there, 10.7 seconds the final advantage that Magnani had. And the boot, alongside the fastest lap, the pole position, he has the fastest lap and the win of the race. So it is a trifecta. It was a perfect day for him, leading almost all the laps ahead of Seminara, allowed the PDA on podium. With Barrios and De Carmo, with that fantastic battle for 4th and 5th, they are just only about 2/10 apart. Mora 6, Nadal is 7 after his drive-through. If it's your hands after his extended pit stop and stop-and-go penalty. Piaski in 9th, he had a bit of a offbeat final second segment of the race. And then Dantas, who unfortunately wasn't really in the races at all, but at least he manages to be classified, albeit 4 laps behind.
And an incredible race that was rounded off by a crazy battle between Bruno De Carmo, and at the end it was also my memory really serves me, tell me Barrios at the end. I really forgot the names just because of how entertaining it was, but kudos to Barrios, right? Because after you get tapped a couple of times here and there, it's easy for a driver to lose concentration and to be intimidated. Anyone would do that, right? Because if someone's that aggressive behind you wanting a position, you can maybe drop the ball a couple of times here and there, maybe miss your braking marker, or just perhaps lose it and crash. But he didn't do that, even though he got spun around by Bruno De Carmo one time actually, one big occasion that we saw towards the end. He still held his nerve, and that for me has to be one of the drives of the race today, apart from, of course, our winner Magnani. But what would be your drive of the day, Amir, considering all the other drivers?
Well, I would say the race winner himself, which is absolutely, again, I just say it was a curb stomp. Absolutely. He led almost all the way. Magnani was just untouched from start to finish. And he just metronomically did lap after lap after lap, the consistent pace that allowed him from lap number 1 all the way to the end to just maintain that pace and never really look back. So he's my driver of the race. But the battle of the race had to go through between 4th and 5th. Barrios and De Carmo, you guys can think about, yes, it was a little bit dirty at one point where there was a collision, but luckily sportsmanship prevailed and we were treated to a really good battle. So in an otherwise slightly processional race, we had some things to talk about, and those two gave us really a lot of things to talk about.
Well, on that, Amir, I really want to know your take as well. As a driver, right, do you think De Carmo could have done anything differently there? Because for him, it must be such a frustrating position, being stuck behind someone and knowing your car has more pace. But being Zandvoort, there's not much room there, right? Do you think there's anything else that could have been done from his side?
I think from turn 13 and 14 all the way to the RE Lion Die box, he might have actually had a half chance if he actually got those corners right to set up a move coming through Tarzanbog. But unfortunately, we didn't really see that. We saw Barrios actually defended quite well coming through those corners in particular, especially through turn number 1. He was just moving once, held his line, that's it. He really didn't have to do much because De Carmo really didn't have the pace to do anything there. So I think turn 1 would have been a prime overtaking spot if he got it right in the couple corners preceding that.
Well, the ifs, buts and maybes of racing all coming into play for Bruno De Carmo as he came in P5. But before we sign off with the AMX1 race, we have to briefly also mention how good Magnani was to win by his margin, even though he was just a tenth and a half faster than the others in qualifying. The consistency, that, Amir, is beyond me. Even though he got his first stint extended right to the very last couple of laps of it. He didn't make any major mistakes. Sure, he was pushing right to the edge of the car, which we saw a couple of times actually. He went on the grass a couple of times, on the gravel once or twice as well, but never making that significant error which gave the door open for any of the drivers. And that takes some doing in such a long race as well.
Yes, absolutely. He didn't let off the concentration one bit. So that's just his quality, isn't it? You just know that that kind of driver is hard to beat when he's on his day. But today, definitely, he turned up, just smoked the entire field, despite a very close margin in qualifying. He proved that he was fast in the single lap. He was also fast over the 24 laps that we had here today. So credit to where credit is due. He was the class of the entire field, and looking forward to seeing more of him either this season or the next season after this. So we'll wait. We'll just watch this space to see the best of him yet.
So one more ACC round in the AMX 1 class is going to be coming up exactly 7 days from now. That will be the season finale with a lot more prize money on offer, and also that special rig from Next Level Gaming as well. But now, folks, it is time to take a short 15-minute break, because after that, we'll be back with some iRacing action. We've got Monza with GT3 cars up next for you. So stay right here. We'll be back in 10 to 15 odd minutes.
To save our home, we must travel through the gateway to find new energy.
What do you think of when you think of Monza? Speed, Ferrari, crazy racing? Merge all of them together and you get today's main event for the AMX 10 class. We are going GT3 racing here at Monza with the best of the very best on iRacing taking each other on. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the AMX 10 race. And today we've got Ferraris in action at Monza. And Amir, you are quite clearly wearing the right t-shirt because a quick look at the grid for today and we've got Ferrari, one or two Porsches here and there, but all the others are just the Ferraris. But the interesting thing is the drivers who are piloting them. We've got so many big names on the iRacing service here in action today, and of all of them, which one of them excites you the most personally?
Ooh, hard to pick out, to be honest, because every one of these guys, they're actually going to be race winners. But yeah, just talking about the shirt, it was coincidental actually. I didn't really realize that it was fit for the occasion. But yeah, what's a Ferrari, you know? But yeah, can't wait. I just wanted to see how this race goes because really some of the best drivers in the entire iRacing system and in the entire championship are all here today. The likes of Pascucci, Soriano, Leberge, even Aaron Vasquez, who's a real crowd pleaser, and of course Gavalero. So can't wait for these guys to come out and play.
Yeah, I really put you on the spot there because if I had to ask the same question to myself, I would struggle as well because the likes of Gustavo Ariel, who's a world championship driver, by the way, with that license, is also part of that grid. So it's really hard to choose from. But what that does is create such a variable field because we saw that whenever these drivers get to race against each other, as we saw yesterday in our AMX 10 GT4 race, there will be pandemonium, clean pandemonium that is, because these drivers really know how to race each other. But eventually it becomes great racing and we've got so many top drivers. But let's talk about how the AMX 10 category works and what is on offer for all the drivers. So quite clearly, we have two heats. Of course, drivers go into a 20-minute qualifying session where they stand a chance to win some big cash prizes. And after that, the top 15 get reversed. So imagine if you set it on pole position, you will end up starting P15 for that first heat race. And by the way, there is cash prizes on offer for every single one of them. And we'll talk about that in a short second. So the reverse grid will set the grid for race number 1. And the results from that will also then be reversed to set the order for race number 2. So realistically, you could qualify first, start P15, and if you end up winning that race, you will then go back down to start P15 again for that second heat. So lots of variability around for all the drivers, and it often means that the fastest drivers could be found in the mid-pack, which means that comeback stories are going to be quite fun. Of course, you folks can also join this championship right now. We've got 3 more races left to go, upcoming next Tuesday, Saturday and Sunday, and it's open for everyone. The AMX 10 category, well, you do need a certain racing license to be a part of that, but AMX 1, join in at any time. Only 3 more races left to go in this season, but in mid-May, we will be back with season 5 of the AMX Global Championship as well. So lots to play for all the way through. And the schedule, it's pretty similar as what we discussed earlier on as well. 7:20 p.m. GMT is the time to go racing for AMX 10. And we've been doing that for so many weeks now, to the point that there are so many drivers like Roman Pascucci, Pedro Dean, Juan Blanat, and so many others like Aaron Vasquez, who have bookmarked this time as being their playground, as being their time zone to go racing. And if you're good enough, if you're at that level, you can also join in and compete against them as well. How cool would that be? And the prize pool, well, we've got to talk about that. So $30 on offer for the winner of each session, be it qualifying, Heat 1 and Heat 2. So realistically, you could end up winning a total of $98 if you end up getting everything right. That is a pole in qualifying, a win in Heat 1, a win in Heat 2, and fastest lap in both the heats as well, which give you $4 respectively. But that is going to be hard to do because the reverse grid rules will come into action, and eventually the prize pool is a total of $500 per race. The drivers to enter, all they've got to pay is $10. If you win, there's a lot more on offer. And throughout the season, some top drivers have competed in this championship. Just look at the quality of the names. Dino Filippa, Aaron Vasquez, by the way, one of the best young up-and-coming drivers on the iRacing service. Only 16, but still with an A license on his hands. Nico Wojcicki of Drago Racing is also part of this. Joan Blanard is also one to watch for, as is Pedrodin and the likes. But consistency pays. Kyle Valero has entered 29 races. He's only won 3 of them and has only, spent $290 entering, but he's taken home $1,319 just by racing in this championship. Yes, that is a lot of cash money, baby. And what is on offer at the season's end? Well, this GT Elite Sim Rig from Next Level Racing goes to the champion. Now, in the way it plays out, it's not the most conventional championship per se, in that the points just keep on adding up and drivers have a certain team and a certain number of points that they score every single round by competing. It's not a fixed setup like that. You join it at your own will. So all the drivers that are scoring the maximum points have taken part in most races and have been most consistent. Jackson Rosende, for example, hasn't quite been the most successful in terms of his results, but his consistency is what puts him in P2 and in contention for that amazing rig. But Kyle Valero has been the top of the lot. He has been the man to fend off, and with 494 points, it seems like he has an almost unassailable lead, as we have only one more race in this class next Sunday. And so let's talk about the circuit and the car, Monza. You're wearing the right t-shirt for that, Amir, but Monza, what do you make of it? What is this place and why is it so exciting?
Well, you can safely say it's one of the most iconic racing circuits in the world. The Autodromo Nazionale Monza, bang on cue. Just as I said the full name, there we go. There we have the shot of it in the background. Located in Monza, Italy.
We can't quite hear Amir for a second, so we should just carry on to talk about this circuit. And well, Monza, Temple of Speed as it's known as, 5.7 kilometers in length. But it's mostly the corners, and it's kind of funny because with Monza you normally tend to think, it's the straights where you end up winning the race, but the exits from those few limited corners, that's where all the time can be won or lost, especially in GT3 cars where it's probably not the easiest one to chuck into a corner as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how the drivers navigate this circuit over the 2 heats. And the cars that they're going to be racing are going to be GT3s, but most of them are actually the Ferraris. Again, a new addition to the service, a car that most people use early on in their GT racing career. And most of them have opted for this one, but a couple of drivers have also gone for the 911 GT3R, which is an interesting choice because it has a pretty high top speed and isn't quite doing the best in terms of performance, at least in qualifying and in practice. So it's fun to see most drivers choosing the Ferrari. But this class needs no introduction. We've got traction control and ABS on GT3 cars, tons and tons of aero to play with. It can be a bit understeery, it can be a bit tricky to chuck into a corner, but knowing GT3s, it's the staple diet of any iRacer. If you are good at GT3s, you can be good at almost anything.
Yeah, just talking about Monza and then GT3s, it's just really the best combo that I could think of, and it will be slipstream class plenty because
6 cars on offer in this class. We've got the Audi, the Mercedes, the Ferrari, the Porsche, the Aston Martin, and I might be missing the BMW, but only 2 of them in action today as we race in Monza. And it's almost fitting, actually we forgot the Lamborghini as well, my apologies about that, but it's almost fitting that we're going to go racing at Monza with Ferraris. And this particular car, it's an easy one to drive in comparison to all the other ones. It's not as, let's say, snappy as all the other cars. It's not as aggressive on you. It's an easy one to get used to initially, which makes it interesting because it can also be very understeery. So you really got to work hard to find the time in this car, especially when the corners are as sharp as they are in Monza. So let's go to qualifying, and it's live in action. A 20-minute session for all the drivers to put in their fastest laps of the entire weekend, and $30 will go to the driver who does set the fastest lap in this session. We've got tons and tons of time left, only 12 minutes into the session right now, so 8 minutes left to go for all the drivers to get in there and put in a really good lap. It takes lots of time warming up, lots of practice, and it's interesting because most of these drivers, the likes of Tobias Soriano, Joan Blena, Roman Pascucci, Nino Filippo, Martin Chico, Nico Wojcicki, and all the others, just 24 hours ago, they were actually racing GT4 cars at Spa-Francorchamps, a circuit that could not be any different to Monza in its nature. Sure, it has one long straight to contend with, but all the other things, well, they are so different. Spa has such a beautiful mix of really high-speed corners, but Monza, well, it's got only a few of them that flow as much. This chicane, the Ascari one, that's where you've really got to throw in your car and hope for the very best. But it's the other ones, the first sector, the really slow first turn 1 and 2 chicane will really catch lots of drivers out. And at the start, watching the battles there is going to be so interesting, because in any iRacing open lobby, chaos can be expected there. So with the best of the very best, we're hoping that they're going to be clean. But how clean can they ever be at turn 1 in Monza, which is anyway a paradise for chaos?
Yeah, that's why the meme exists, doesn't it? Because turn 1 can be quite a tricky proposition even the best of times, but with a field this close and this fast, it might just actually be ramped up beyond 100 here if they were to come in very hot into turn 1. But again, we'll see how that plays out, especially the front guys. They know what they're doing, but the guys further behind are going to start at the front. They'll have to watch their mirrors in case someone plows into them coming through turn 1.
And turn 1 could potentially be very messy. It's a very long run down there, which means that a good start is absolutely imperative. But those sausage curbs, they bite quite clearly. Sure, we're back on iRacing, which means that you can ride those curbs a little bit easier than you can on a platform like Assetto Corsa Competizione, but nevertheless, it will be quite a factor to use, because when you think of Monza, largely the perception is long straights, parabolica, lots of chaos, but people tend to forget to ride the curves to maximize your lap time. And when we come to this upcoming section here, the way the drivers cut the curbs really gives them option to gain a lot of time, and that is going to be such a feature of this qualifying session, is it not going to be?
I'm not sure whose camera angle was that one, because he was actually right on the ceiling of a tunnel, if anything, or he was actually flying the other way around. Whatever it is, that is a camera angle and a half to look at that particular instance. But it might have been either Aaron Vasquez or whoever. No, it was actually Cabral who we were looking at just now. That we had a camera angle that was more or less in Australia compared to in Italy.
Not a bad one. Yeah, totally upside down. And speaking of upside down, this could well be a topsy-turvy race in that sense as well, because yesterday, when these very drivers were competing in the GT4 class race at Spa, we saw some server issues, but before that, we saw lots and lots of drivers crashing into each other in the second heat. Now, in the first heat, they were clean, but in the second one, these drivers did tend to lose their minds a little bit, even though they are some of the best on the platform. And that is the thing, right? We could see cars be upside down here, because no matter the iRating, no matter how good the drivers are, there's something about Monza that just breeds chaos. And whenever drivers go racing here, sure, they technically might be very good, but crashes are to be expected.
Yep, chaos breeds chaos, and that might be the order of the day here, especially turn 1. That infamous, fearsome turn 1. It looks like a very simple chicane, but when you put 20 cars or more together, plowing through there, it might become a traffic jam that's worse than most major cities.
It's been a very clean session. And Tobias Soriano, who was one of our star performers in the AMX 10 GT4 race, who actually won 8-1 up against Nikodem Wojcicki, is currently in P1, but the margins, fine as they always are, barely 1/100th of a second separating Soriano and Aaron Vasquez, who has been the star of the AMX 10 category, completely leading in the rear wheel drive category and also doing an incredibly good job in the GT class. It'll be fun to watch, because for someone like Aaron Vasquez, who knows that the chip is on his shoulder, watching all the other drivers take him down the GT3s will be fun, because GT3s are the staple, right? If you are an iRacer and if you are competing at the level that these drivers are, which for context, Most of them are around 9,000 I rating, 8,000, some of them World Championship drivers. For them, being good in GT3s is a matter of pride because this is the staple category that everyone has to do well in. So, more than just the prize money, a lot of it is just down to bragging rights. Everyone would want to win this one so badly.
Yep, it's definitely a yardstick, shall we say, because it really is showing the best of the best drivers. As you can see, a camera angle showing the old circuit with the banking on one side. That's where Monza used to be, but now in the modern day, still called the Temple of Speed, really fast. And across the line comes Vasquez. We know how fast he could be, but for the time being, still stays in P3, but only 8 thousandths behind Soriano. That is very close. In fact, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, all in the same postcode by about 600ths of a second.
It's insane. It is absolutely mind-boggling to the point that there is literally nothing to separate Dino Filippa and Aaron Vasquez in second and third. By literally nothing, I mean literally nothing. Only 1,000th of a second. That has to be one of the closest qualifying gaps anywhere, ever. But that will change because one more qualifying run is left to go and Dino Filippa gets it launched. Absolutely up in the air he goes in his one qualifying lap. That was a proper chuck and a send.
Oh.
And there's an error. There he goes.
Wow.
Off goes. Actually, that was Aaron Vasquez going wide. And what was turning out to be an already messy qualifying lap ends in tears for him.
Yeah, but Filippa does one better. He goes into the fives, 47.5. That's certainly high up there. Some of the fastest pro times you can see. And Filippa looks very happy with that one. He goes a bit wide-eyed there, but he knows full well that the job's not done yet because there's still several drivers who can actually just best him in that time. So he's ahead of Soriano and Vasquez. Chico comes across the line, didn't improve that time. Gustavo Ariel, a 47.6 as well, still stays P5 in a competitive top 10, separated by just 0.5 of a second.
It is absolutely mind-boggling that what we're getting to see here.
Look at that, Ariel, 47.4. What a stonking lap there, Somil.
He has smoked it out of the park. Before this, there was barely anything to split up the entire competition. Now, Gustavo Ariel, a former World Championship level driver, has now put a dent between himself and Dino Filippa. That could well be the margin that defines it. A couple of other drivers could be in the mix to challenge him, but no one from that existing top 10 seems to be out there to do it. Can someone like Jackson Resende do it? No, he cannot. He goes back in the pit lane, and the drivers that we're getting to see right now, they've got to put in a proper shift to make sure that they can challenge Gustavo Ariel right at the very top of that field. But what is mind-boggling is the fact that there's only 1/10 of a second separating them, and then the gap, right? We are seeing 9 drivers under 0.4 of a second in qualifying. If that doesn't tell you how close this field is, nothing will. And that's just qualifying, folks. When the racing begins shortly, things are going to get crazy. Gustavo Ariel, your pole sitter, he takes home the $30 cash prize. But importantly, Gustavo Ariel will now also have to go back to P15 for the start of that first heat race, which will mean that Gaston Kulhavi will be on pole position for the first heat race, and that could be a recipe for success because we saw yesterday Gaston Kulhavi is one hard driver to pass when he is at the top of the field. Second place goes to Dino Filippa with barely anything to separate it, but as I mentioned earlier on, only 0.4 of a second separating the top 9. That, Amir, is mind-boggling. Seriously, when you consider the quality of that grid.
That's mad. Look at that. First to 16th, 0.8 of a second from Gustavo Ariel all the way to David Givok there. And Kosciuszki is not that far off either. So, really then, only 500 separated Givok from actually starting at the front of the entire field. So he'll be devastated by that one. He could have been where Gaston Kulhavi is. But, again, qualifying is one thing, race is another. Let's see how the 2 heats go after this, Somil.
And we should as well. So for Gustavo Ariel of Team Redline Racing, his task is cut out. Start P15, and see where you can get. And those comeback stories are what we love the AMX 10 category for, because so many good drivers have to then fight their way back because of the reverse grid rules. Are we seeing rain?
And it's raining.
all
Yeah,
off
it's
it
raining. Look at that. It's rain on the screen there. This might just change the entire complexion of the heat there, Somil.
This is fantastic. It's only the first time, I suppose, that we're getting to see rain on the AMX 10 grid, because it's only just come in recently on the iRacing service as a part of the 2024 Season 2 upgrade, which means that we are going to get to see GT3 cars in the rain at Monza in a top 15 reverse grid race. You wanted chaos, ladies and gentlemen? Here it is. You have got chaos. This is going to be mind-boggling, because now the traction zones are completely different, and we don't really have lots of reference markers for rain, Amir, because so few races have been run competitively here with rain. But from what we've heard drivers say, racing lines really change badly. That could shake up the entire grid, no?
Indeed, it does. And the fact that have some of the drivers been caught up by this, because I don't know if they actually gotten their wet tires on, because remember, only very few cars on the service right now have wet weather tires fitted onto them. But the GT3 cars being one of them, we might see some drivers actually jump into the pits if they actually forgot to bolt it on. So this really changes the whole complexion of the entire race. And given the fact that if you go offline here, you can actually go off into the barrier. So a wet line, if you can find it, would be beneficial if you had wet weather tires on. So really then, a lot of unknowns coming to the first heat, Somil.
Italian hand gestures will be up in the air, as will be the umbrellas in the stands. This is going to be such a big twist into what already seemed like such an entertaining race anyway. Wow, GT3 cars racing at Monza, and then we have rain on top of that, and then we have the best drivers on the service trying to fend it off. Have they done enough laps in the rain in these cars? Well, probably not, considering how new rain is to the service, but we shall figure out on the way, because green, the racing for Heat 1 is underway. Gaston Coulthardly leads from the front as Jackson Vicente has the inside line heading towards turn number 1. Look at this, folks. There is going to be spray in the back of most people's windscreens because it is raining, and turn number 1, normally a home of chaos, is clean. No surprise when you consider the quality of this field, when most drivers are mostly above an 8,000i rating. But that cannot be taken for granted, because as we come towards the second sector of the circuit, towards the variante, towards the second sector, towards most of the chicanes are, chaos could unfold. Resende is second, which Pitsky is fighting hard with Zampellini for P3. But so far, so good, Amir.
Oh, amazing. And you normally think that even in a dry race that you could get actually flattened into the barriers or by other cars when you come to turn number 1. It is absolutely clean. It's amazing in the wet that the drivers are so well behaved. Yes, you got a bit of argy-bargy, but every single one of these guys, all 21 that we have on the race right now, have actually gotten through the first couple of sectors absolutely safely. But now, time to really get the motor going and see if you can make up positions. Look at that. They're fanning out coming to Ascari there, Somil.
Side by side they go, touch footing, going clean. That, ladies and gentlemen, will have to be Roman Pastucci and Martin Chico going side by side up against each other. Pastucci is in that bright green machine we saw in the background, the number 23. But Dutchwood, he's kept it all safe. And now, over the course of the 7-lap race, it's going to be interesting to watch the racing lines, because now we see Ishpitsky go to the outside of Resendez that we saw a couple of seconds ago. And it was interesting, because the outside line of the Parabolica normally is in the best place to find grip, but we saw Ishpitsky do that. Now, we're seeing more drivers go side by side. This is phenomenal. Crossing the finish line at the end of the first lap, it is Gaston Coulthardly leading, because Ishpitsky and Resendez are locked in side by side in what's turning out to be a crazy battle for second place. Now they go into the first corner. They make contact. What is happening here? Resende gets pushed to the outside line, which Pitsky makes contact, and guess what? Zampellini has a run around the outside. He's going to do what Lewis Hamilton tried to do what Charles Leclerc back in 2019. Using the outside line to his advantage and converting it to an inside line as a head towards the Variante della Roccia.
Look at that, 3 wide even, coming up to the chicane. This is absolutely manic. It is in the wet, no less. But look at that. Despite the chopping and changing, everyone keeps their lines together. Oh, big accident. In fact, one guy gets flipped around. It looks like Zampolini's actually been hurt. But everybody somehow manages to go through that without any major drama. Just a few bumps and bruises. This is crazy. This is AMX racing at its best.
You wanted madness, you got madness. The drivers finally coming together, and we knew this would happen. It was just a matter of time. But the quality of these drivers are such that they've managed to keep it on with no car in the barrier and no car retiring as well. So no major position changes apart from Zampolini, who was running around P4, and he is now dropped back down to P14. But there's a spinner. That would have to be Porsche Angelo Vando, Amir.
Yeah, Vando might have actually gotten tagged there. Unfortunately, that was really a case of he tried to go around the outside, but he got tagged. I think it was either by Chico or Soriano. I couldn't really make it out which car was there, but luckily for him, he didn't get too much damage. As on the inside goes Vasquez, free wide, coming through the Parabolica, the Bikini Aberrata Parabolica. Then they're still at it, 3 Ferraris. On your left, that was Vasquez. In the middle is Resende. Around the outside is actually Valero. They're going to go wheel to wheel then. There's Resende actually using the slipstream. He's going to have to use the dry line on the inside a bit. Now he gets back onto the wet patches, trying to find grip as they go side by side, coming into the Rettifilio for the 3rd time here. Who's going to be the bravest on the brakes? It is Resende around the outside. He tries to get the better of Vasquez, but Vasquez gets the better line, and Resende loses it a bit, and he raises his head in gesticulation because he knows full well he can get the power in. But amazing racing. The wet weather really has turned things up an extra notch.
And what line does Resende choose now? He's trying to go for the inside, heading into Variante de la Roccia, but he can't do that because Aaron Vasquez is a smart driver. Instead, Resende is getting forced into defending, and that opens up the door for Dino Filippa. He's gone in and has seized the opportunity. He moves up into P5, and Florian Lebigra has also stolen a couple of positions to get up into P3. Oh, that was some crazy racing. Aaron Vasquez really forcing the issue there.
He forced the issue, but unfortunately the big collateral of all of that was Gar Valero. Valero really went onto the gravel trap, lost a few positions, dropped it from where he started P7. He was up to P5 at one point, battling Vasquez, but now he's dropped all the way back to P10 on the fringes of the top 10, trying to battle with Martin Chico and Gustavo Ariel. Ariel hasn't had the best of progress either. Yes, he made up 3 positions, but he's not the best. He's not where he really wants to be because he wants to show the pace that he has in that car. But in the wet, it's kind of a bit of a leveler, isn't it? Not many drivers have gotten a handle of it just yet, but amazingly, not many people have aquaplaned it either. So they've gotten a handle somewhat of driving in the wet stuff. Kamil.
They must have practiced so much. As soon as rain was announced, as soon as rain came onto the platform, these drivers must have spent all their days practicing here because remember, a lot of them are professionals contracted to some really big sim racing teams, the likes of Drago Racing, Redline Racing, and Apex Racing, among many others in the mix as well. So great to see them having that much control, but there comes a big send. Vasquez under pressure. Well, this is turning out to be interesting, and there's a spinner in the background.
It's Vasquez. Vasquez has in fact tapped around. Just now we were looking at Lebish actually attacking Vizbiki, and there he goes. Aaron Vasquez, the driver who we thought was going to be doing the biz up in the front. Unfortunately, probably got tagged there. Meanwhile, Lebish has got it in front of Vizbiki.
Great move there by Florian Lebigra as he moves up into P2. More opportunities for him to try and attack Gaston Bulhavi, who's now running away from the lead with 1.3 seconds. That was a rare issue and a rare error from someone like Aaron Vasquez, who's dropped back down to P18 when he was actually running so high up. That was a rare one, and self-inflicted importantly. That's so important to consider in the context of this race because sure, the rain might be something that these drivers have practiced, but that shows you just how dangerous it can be. One slight imperfect input of the throttle, and that's it. That is your race over and done with.
Yeah, and sometimes it could either be on the curves because, you know, the adage is that if you touch a wet curb on a very wet track, it will actually be the one that sends you spinning because of the paint. But it looks as though the curbs are not much of an issue here. It's actually whether or not the driver beside you has stopped just in time to prevent you from being punted around as we look at further behind. Bolero on the recovery trail after being forced out wide by, incidentally, Aaron Vasquez. So Vasquez has actually dropped way behind. We're looking at the outside now, back into the action. Bolero on the outside of Tobias Soriano. No, it's actually Ariel around the inside there, and he is getting up to the back of Tobias Soriano, who is one of the fastest guys in qualifying. Across the finish line they go. They can take here, there, and everywhere. Any line can work in the wet. Here, Sawmill.
The comeback is being scripted right before your very eyes. Gustavo Ariel is on the inside line as we almost go 3 wide, heading into the first corner, the notorious first corner, where there is a spinner. Tobias Soriano, the winner of the heat race yesterday, the GT4 class, is spun out and he's causing an impact to so many other drivers. Couple of more cars spinning in front of him. Madness has unfolded here in Monza. All of the drivers losing traction, losing control and losing their heads just as we are in the commentary box. What has unfolded here, Amir?
Oh, by the looks of it, it looks as though just now Soriano was the first to be punted around by fast charging Bolero, because Bolero's already outside. Soriano tried the inside, he got looped around, and then it just caused a bit of a cataclysmic disaster for the rest of the field. The rain actually gets heavier. We saw just now some sunshine, but it looks as though the rain has actually come in full force here. Zampolini was also the other guy that actually lost his rear wing. Ovando was involved, Dean as well. There were many other drivers involved in the secondary collision after the first one. Now the field is a bit more strung out, but up in front, Kulhavi only has a 3/10 advantage in front of Flori Lebesche, with Nikodem Vezbicki in third place, also watching brief here. Top 3 have well and truly broken away here. Felipe, best of the rest.
And this is turning out to be a really fun battle because Gaston Kulhavi on that last lap lost an entire second to Florian Lebigra and Nikodem Vezbicki right behind him. That is a significant amount of time to lose under 1 lap, and then defending is going to be a different task for him altogether, knowing that he's not got as much pace as the drivers behind him. But knowing Gaston Kulhavi from all of his races in the AMX 10 category, he is one thick-skinned driver. Regardless of the names behind him, Kulhavi will not break. Pass him if you can is going to be his motto as Florian Lebigra tries to take up that challenge. What line will he go for, or will he go for any commitment at all in the first corner? The answer is no, and that would have to be a rather wise move from here because the run clearly wasn't quite there. The run into Variante della Roggia, which is coming up next, that could be the critical one, but it seems like Lebigra and Vezbicki just don't have it.
Yeah, because the exit was a bit tight there because Kulhavi forced him to go narrow, and in turn, he managed to control the pace here by just holding them a bit. As further behind from Kwasniewski is the battle for Soriano, Zibok, and Lina. They were all actually involved in that little scuffle in the first and the previous lap. Zampolini comes to the pits because he lost the rear wing. But talking about Kulhavi, we know how well he can defend, especially when he's got a bit to the team. But for the time being, pace-wise, he's not been able to eke out an advantage in front of Florian Lebesch and Nikodem Vezbicki. But really, again, we go back to the old adage. Catching is one thing, passing is another. And Kulhavi will try to make that Ferrari as wide as it could ever be coming through the Ascari chicane and the rest of the circuit. It will be quite difficult for Lebesch to actually find a way through the inside. He's got a slipstream, but he's got a lot of spray in his face as well. He cannot know when he's going to pull out and pass, and Kulhavi is already there to defend.
And this is where things get really interesting because conventionally you would like to go on some of the better lines like the inside line heading into the Parabolica, which is going to be coming up now. But in the wet, the way iRacing has developed this software, the way they've developed Rain, is so similar to real life where the rubbered in patches tend to get even slipperier. So you have got to go to the outside line to make things work. Just like Florian Lebigra is doing right now in that Red Bull Ferrari. What can he do here? Has he got a better run? Clearly better than last time out. And now that Ferrari will have a great drive. Gaston Kulhavi has got a ton of defending to do. In fact, there's not much that he can do apart from staying committed to the inside line, which he will. The Lebigra with his nose up ahead heading into turn number 1. They make contact and touch wood. Both the cars are alright, but now the run seems to be phenomenal for Lebigra. temporarily. It is Kulhavi with the position, but I don't think it's going to stay this way for too long, Amir.
Well, they were really going at it side by side, and Harvey really had to play a game of chicken between himself and the Lebej. They're coming into turn number 1. He braked much later, but he was really banking on that Lebej doesn't hit him off. Coming into the second part of the chicane, he did that, and luckily they both got away with it. But it looks as though Lebej has come to the inside this time, makes the maneuver stick, and he has lost a bit of traction. It does Harvey, falls into the clutches of Nikodem Vesbiki. Now it's Vesbiki's chance to get up in front of his fellow Ferrari driver, but he will prove to be one tough nut to crack, because we saw just now how many laps Lebej had to be stuck there to finally pull off the move against Kulhavi.
And this is going to be a beautiful shot as we get to see how much spray is actually impactful inside the car, as we see Nico Vesbitsky make his move on Gaston Kulhavi. Clearly Kulhavi not having a great run through the Lesmos, and he had no momentum whatsoever as he drops down the 2 positions from P1 back down to P3. I mean, you've got to say, Kulhavi fought hard for those. I mean, he really put the car in the right places, but when you're just as fast as Migra and as Vesbitsky have been, there's not much that you can do. So, it's time to counter-attack now. Kulhavi has his sights set on P2, with the inside line being his line of choice with Vesbitsky, but clearly there is so little that he can do with the kind of run that he has. So that means we can focus on the battle behind them. Roman Pascucci is having to fight against the likes of Kyle Valero, Martin Chico, and Aaron Vasquez is actually scripting such a good comeback. He was down in P17, P18 if I'm not mistaken. He's already come back up to P10 within 24 laps. That is a really fast and a really good drive.
Yeah, but crucially though, he will start somewhere near the front for the second heat, so we'll keep an eye out for that if Vasquez will stay that way. But I highly doubt it. He knows that he's got some points on the line here if he wants to actually get it back up to the front. Meanwhile, it looks as though Vesbitsky got a very poor run coming out of the Michele Apparato Parabolica. He's got Kulhavi only arrears by about 4/10 of a second, losing about 1.8 seconds to Lebej. So Lebej has actually come out in front. He has kept the lead up in front here by a considerable margin. That's to say buffer now, as Ariel is behind Vicente. You can hear the raindrops fall on the car. That's how intense the rain has gotten here. And a few people in the comment section have said, the rain is awesome. Yes, it is. And we have had quite a doozy of a race so far, but it's still not over yet. We only have 4 laps to go here as Ariel takes the white line, the go-kart line on the outside. Vicente responds in kind, blocked off, but he might have left the door open coming through last mode 2. Nope, just about hangs on to it. It is a real humding of a race here, and it's still not done yet.
But the outside line works. The simulation really is working as it is supposed to. The lines that are normally slower in the dry tend to become faster in the wet, and we can't see that happen because that move has been made using the momentum carried from that outside line. Gustavo Ariel is now up into P5, and now he can fight. Your Paul Sirr, the man who just won $30 by qualifying P1 a few minutes ago, is now up into P5, gaining 10 positions from where he started. And this comeback, this is going to be one great story to watch, because looking at the times, looking at the overall control of things, Gustavo Ariel is popping in some really competitive lap times, even faster on the drives ahead of him, had it not been for Jackson Resende holding him up. Now that Gustavo Ariel has open clean air and no car impacting his visibility thanks to the spray, Gustavo Ariel is going to be a force to reckon with in the last couple of laps of this race. Lap 9 then,
yeah,
under the books, 2 more laps.
Yeah.
Actually,
Yeah, he has not enough time to actually get up to the front, or at least in the top 3, but the most he can do right now is P4. In fact, it might become P4 immediately because Kulhavi's dropped it, and there you go. A valiant effort up in front has unfortunately come up to naught, almost, because he's not going to drop near to the back of the top 10, but Kulhavi, a valiant fight toward the end, just has not produced the goods that he wanted, but he'll definitely be the moral winner in everybody's books, as Ariel's not up to P4. He's only got 2 seconds to gain in front of him with Felipe up in third. There's Resende defending from Valero, but Valero goes really narrow, and that opens up Pascucci's opportunity to get by him too as well. They touch! Oh, that nearly came a cropper.
that is naughty. That is absolutely naughty. Roman Pascucci looking for gaps where there clearly are none. But that is the intensity of the racing. He thought there was a place there. And Kyle Valero simply had one thing to say: not there, buddy, not there, not right now. Which means that Roman Pascucci now has to redo his strategy, rethink about where he can go. And thinking is going to be quite hard to do when there's barely anything that you can see right before your very eyes. The spray is real, folks. It is not a joke. The inside lines are barely visible. The apexes are so badly hidden. And you're basically driving on instinct. And instinct is something that these drivers will really have, considering their iRating and considering the number of laps that they've driven at Monza. They almost might know this place in GT3 cars with a blindfold, but not in the wet, not with these sort of traction zones. And now we should take a look at what happens between this battle, between Kyle Valero and Roman Pascucci. Because look at this. That outside line, Amir, is clearly working. Pascucci is carrying so much momentum there. But knowing Kyle Valero, he knows exactly what to do to block off that run into the Tretifiglio. Just keep the car in the center and you'll be okay. The drivers here are doing their best to make sure the others can't pass, and that means that the action that we're getting to see is becoming even more intense as we come to the penultimate lap of this race.
Whoa, Kulami! Is he gonna hit?
Whoa, what?
Whoa, that is very close. That was a mighty moment there from Gaston Kulhavi. Nearly hits the side of Valero. Valero thought, where the heck did he come from? But mercifully got out of the way just in time.
If that was intentional, that will be frowned upon by the stewards, even though nothing happened. But it could well also be a case of maybe a technical error, maybe the brakes just locking up, or maybe there being no traction at all, or maybe him touching his wheels on the grass. Whatever it might be for Gaston Kulhavi, as they say, when it rains, it quite clearly pours. And for Gaston Kulhavi, that race for him is turning out to be an absolute flood of incidents, to put it that way, if that's one way to describe it. But let's focus our attention back on the top, because Florian Lebigre has clearly run away with it with a 6-second gap ahead of Nikodem Wezbicki, who just does not have as much of a comfort zone compared to Dino Filippa. Filippa is looking on the outside line trying to pass Wezbicki, and Wezbicki says, buddy, I'm not going to let you go that easily. You're going to have to work hard. It's now Drago Racing versus Red Line Racing. A battle that so many sim racing enthusiasts would relish to watch. Bring it on. One more lap left to go. What are we getting to see here? And was that a wet dash that cost Kulhavi out? It was.
Yes, it was. He touched a bit of a puddle there. Aquaplane. And look at that. Talk about a save and a half. He could have easily whacked into the side past Pascucci and Valero, but kept it out just in time. He only found himself with the barrier, got acquainted with it, but amazingly, the car was not completely damaged and he's still going, albeit outside the top 10 now in P11. As we're on the final lap, white flag flies. Florian Lebigre is 6.8 seconds ahead of Nikodem Wezbicki. There is Lebigre up in front. He really is the wet master today with a really valiant drive to get up to the front. But the battle for second is the one that we really are keen to watch out for as well, because Wezbicki has Filippa and Gustavo Ariel, who we thought was just going to settle for a top 5 finish. Now he'll be able to actually try to claim for a podium position, as Vicente, Valero and Pascucci have gotten into a bit of a kerfuffle there. There's Pascucci, he goes off the track, and I think that looks as though that's big damage.
That would have to be big damage, or that could also be a slowdown penalty. We shall see if we do potentially get a replay of the chaos that has unfolded on that final lap. But regardless, Gustavo Ariel is in the fight. He is only under half a second behind Dino Filippa. And Dino Filippa, he is one of the hardest drivers to pass on this grid. So that battle for third place is going to be intense to watch, to say the very least. But for context, Florian Lebigre is clocking in some of the best lap times. In that last lap, he was 2 seconds faster than anyone else on the track when the rain has only gotten worse. Take a bar for this man, but now let's focus on this battle for second place as we come towards the final sector of the circuit. Dino Filippa tries to make a move at the Ascari. Oh, it's going to be the outside line, and they make contact. Drago Racing and Red Line Racing, with the tempers flaring between the two of them, and Wezbicki has dropped a place. Dino Filippa is up into second. My oh my, that is a final lap for the ages, but it's not done yet, Amir. There could be one more move in the making.
Yeah, you can see that Ariel's on the outside. It's going to be a three-way fight all the way to the line. Felipe goes narrow. Out of the parabolic, they go. There we go. That's heat winner. Florian Lebeige across the line. He takes a commanding victory. But is the battle still up for second place? Who's it going to be? Felipe or Ariel? Is they actually get lost through the smoke? Across the line they go. Felipe hangs up by just 800 of a second in front of his Beaky. The Sunday holds on for P5 as well. But what a finish there. What amazing battle that we had all the way through. The rain really provided that there, Somil.
Bring out your rubber ducks, ladies and gentlemen, and present the golden rubber duck to Florian Lebeigre, because he has mastered the rain and has mastered the wet in phenomenal fashion. Your winner of the first heat, Florian Lebeigre, winning by an incredible 8.6 seconds in this first heat. But the top driver, well, it would have to be Gustavo Ariel as well for fighting these conditions. He was in P15 at the start of the first lap. He ends this race not only as the pole sitter but also as a podium sitter. He's gained 12 positions within 11 laps in probably some of the most treacherous conditions you will ever find on the iRacing service, in a car that he's probably not very comfortable with, because nobody drives a Ferrari at a very competitive level. So what we have seen from Gustavo Ariel is nothing short of iRacing brilliance. Oh, what a race that was. And a big shout out to Peter Felipe as well. I didn't expect him to hold it on so well, but this guy has got nerves of steel, it seems.
Yeah, definitely. It takes a lot of guts and courage to trust everybody in the wet, especially that you can't see through the spray. But it is another to actually pull off some of those overtakes in big fashion. And Gustavo Ariel, take a bow. Despite insurmountable odds, he manages to wring a podium out of that one. And we can't wait for heat number 2. What's it going to bring? Is it going to be more rain, or we're going to have a standard fair race? But we're looking forward to that one, Somil. As Lebeigre, yeah, I think you got that name correct, because I was just searching back to how he pronounced his name. Florian Lebeigre up in front, 8.6 seconds ahead of Felipe and Gustavo Ariel, with Nikitin Vesbiki, the top, the drivers finishing second, third, and fourth, covered by just 0.3 of a second. What an amazing finish there, Somil, and I can't wait for the next one.
And the next one comes in immediately. That's right, literally in a couple of moments' time, we will see the start of heat number 2 for the AMX 10 race, the GT3 cars at Monza. And are we going to see the guys race in the dry now? We shall see in a couple of moments' time. And at the end of heat 1, you've got to tip your hats to Florian Lebeigre and also to Gustavo Ariel, the two standout drivers on this race, with Lebeigre winning by 8 seconds and Ariel from P15 getting up to P3. But he's going to do it all over again now, because he starts heat number 2 from P12. And that's it. The drivers are right there racing in the wet once more. So what you saw initially was just one part of the action. Take 2 comes in immediately. And in the lead of this particular race at the very start is going to be Piotr Kwashinowski. I hope I pronounced that correctly. But yes, Piotr Kwashinowski is going to be leading the race from the very top. But about the drivers who we saw being the stars of the first race. Oh, is that Dustin Kulhavi making an error? No, that's number 10.
No, that's not Kulhavi. That's actually David Zivok. Zivok has crashed out already before even the race started.
Oh well, that would be a Roman Grosjean moment, unfortunately for him. Rain, well, it's daunting, not just when you're racing, but also when you're under the formation lap. My word, iRacing have done a good job. But judging from the first race, Amir, what do you think should be the main things to watch for from this heat 2? Very quickly.
Well, I think the fast guys will come through once again, and the guys in front who are holding on to it, especially the likes of Peter Kwasniewski and Cesar Sabral, they will have their work cut out here with so many of the fast guys right behind, and they already got the bit between their team and the wet.
So then, time for take 2 in the AMX 10 class. We saw rain, we saw chaos, we saw side-by-side action. You want more of it? You've got more of it. Green, green, green. We're out racing for heat number 2 in the GT class of AMX 10. And it's Piotr Kwashinowski leading from the entire field. He's got a good, clean run down into turn 1 with no spray, which is precisely what you need heading into the first lap. But there are already cars squirming underneath the braking. Pedro Dean surviving turn number 1 barely, and as all the cars make their way past turn 1 cleanly, but the run down into the next chicane, that is going to be chaotic to say the very, very least. But so far so good, only one driver falling out, and would have to be Bruno de Carmo.
Yeah, the Carmo unfortunately didn't even start the race, so he'll be counted as a DNS, as G-Walk actually still carried the damage, so fast repair not being able for him, as the cars now come into the De La Roja chicane. Looks as though, once again, just like the very first heat, everyone goes through here safely, as Pedro Dean now is getting a move on. Right outside Kwaśniewski, they've hit! Oh, they've spun around at Lesbo number 1, and that will cause a Constantine effect. The spray will be quite treacherous because the cars are coming through. Oh, it's all kicked off here. Everyone's been knocked off. Just as you said, it was a clean start. Now, it's all gone completely a proper. A few drivers involved. It was Chico, Valero, Zampolini once again being involved there. Some of the top guys are involved, but coming through on all of that, Gustavo Ariel is actually up to now to P7 with Lebigre up to P8.
The pressure cooker has erupted and there are flames in the kitchen. Kwaśniewski falls down, Pedro Dean falls down, and there's another major error. Would that be Cabral? Yes, that is indeed Cabral, who's cut that corner and has lost a ton of time and momentum, which makes him drop back down to P7 from being close to the podium spot. But our attention has to be towards the top of the field because Roman Pascucci and Aaron Vasquez are rubbing pain, and there's another error. Cabral spins Lebigre off. Our winner of the first heat is off. He's in the barriers, and that has to be one of the biggest DNFs in this category. My oh my, things are getting crazy, but there's no time to breathe as the action carries on. Around the outside goes Aaron Vasquez. He has the lead right now, but will he maintain it at the exit of the first corner? Oh yes, he does. Momentum on his side. Aaron Vasquez in the wet is your new race leader.
Yep, we're fulfilling the promise of the pace that he had in the first heat, but now really making the most of it after starting further in front by virtue of finishing a bit lower. Meanwhile, Pascucci is not going to give it up that easily. 2/10 of a second between them, as we see the replay of what happened between major accidents that happened between most drivers in there. That was Pedro Dean around the outside of the number 10 car. That was Zivo. No, that wasn't Zivo. That was actually Kwaśniewski. That triggered an absolute monsoon effect of accidents that come afterwards. You can see body parts of cars flying through the air. They had smoke, they had spray. They couldn't see what's coming, and that was the result of it. That was almost Spa 1988 there, Samuel.
Quite clearly. And just like Spa 1998, so many top drivers have been taken out of the win contention. Drivers like Boris Angelovando, Florian Lebigre, the driver who won that last heat race with a comfortable margin. Pedro Dean is also a quick driver. He's out of contention, as is Gael Valero, who finds himself 48 seconds behind the race leader. That's not going to get it. That's not going to be recovered in a very, very short time. That's for sure. And that means that so many top drivers now find themselves outside the major rewarding positions. Disappointment, to say the least, will be on their minds. But we have to turn our attention back to the battles at the top, because in the AMX 10 races, there never is any moment to breathe. And now for Gustavo Ariel, that is especially true, because in the midst of all this chaos, he started P12, he finds himself now up into P6. This guy has to be the king of comebacks. What is it about Gustavo Ariel, apart from the raw pace, that makes him work so well? Hopefully we'll get to ask him at the end of the race. But Amir, he's going for a move now. He has a line of choice. I think he's going to wait for his moment at the Rocha chicane that's going to be coming up later.
Yeah.
Smart move there by Gustavo Ariel.
Yeah, but the fact that he's got someone the likes of Dexter Tende, who is known to be quite notoriously difficult to pass anyway, he's going to have to make his move at the best possible areas, either the Ascari afterwards or coming out to the De La Roja chicane. But again, even through the Rocha, if he gets it wrong, loses momentum, he's going to really spoil his chances of trying to get back up to the guys in front afterwards. There you can see, thinks of it, of a dink, but Descende holds firm and stays where he is, only for the time being, because up in front of him, Gaston Kohavi is not that far away either. So you can buy this time a bit, and by virtue of the fact that Vasquez is still catchable, he's within earshot of it. You can actually just see him through the spray.
And the spray is a real thing. When we saw the initial trailers of the iRacing service debuting rain, we thought, oh man, are they really going to be nailing spray as much? Are the outside lines going to be really that much faster than the inside and the conventional ones? Well, they took their time, but the developers of iRacing have really nailed this properly, because all the things that we see in a real life wet race are visible here as well. If you're that close to another car, the spray isn't as impactful, versus if you're in a difference of around 2 or 3 tenths of a second, which is the margin between Gustavo Ariel and Jackson Lucende right now. And Ariel might see his windscreen wipers being completely flooded off, but not anymore, because he moves to the outside line at the Parabolica, trying to use that grip, and grip he does fine. Gustavo Ariel goes to the outside line of Jackson Lucende, a move that takes courage, a move that takes absolute determination which you would never find in shortage with a driver like Gustavo Ariel. He's up into P5 and his cup backstory only gets better from here.
Yeah, and he's only about 8 tenths of a second behind Kulhavi, but can he seal the move coming into the Rettifilio? Yes, he does. Resende has to concede that because he didn't get the best of runs. He did have the narrow line, which is the normal racing line coming out of Parabolica, but it's not fast in the wet. As Cabral goes off, he actually just straight lines chicane, comes out in front of Dino Filipa, but he has to get back the position, otherwise he has to competitive. In fact, that is Cabral on his roof. Look at it. He's not driving in Brazil anymore. He's driving in Australia with that camera angle. That is a nice shot, but unfortunately not the best one to have. It's a bit weird, but then again, we will love to see more crazy camera angles just like that.
Yep, and his race has also been just like that. It's been on top of its very head, considering the amount of craziness that he's been through. A couple of taps with other drivers here and there, a couple of trips to the gravel trap as well. It's been a crazy one for Cabral so far, and we are hoping that it only gets cleaner, not just for him, but for all the other drivers as well, because clean, good racing in the wet is what motorsport is all about. Think of Ayrton Senna back in Donington Park in 1993. The kind of moves he made around the outside of so many legendary drivers are the kind of moves that we remember forever. It's those sort of moments that stick with you. And in this platform, with Rain on iRacing, we are going to see so many more drivers write their own story and create those legendary moments as we see a battle between Cabral and Zampolini, who, by the way, has had such a torrid Heat 1 that Heat 2 will only get better from here. There's still hoping that Zampolini has another better opportunity, but what are we seeing at the top here, Ramesh? Some peace, some quiet? Can that ever be the case in any MX-10 race?
Yeah, because look at that. Two seconds to the good for Vasquez and Pascucci. 2.1 now. As it comes across the line is actually Blenat. So Juan Blenat actually is coming out to the back of his fellow Argentine. There we go. We have the camera of both drivers on screen there. Blenat is not going to be phased by it. He's looking onto the inside, with Pascucci also going narrow as him. But both drivers managing to break it just in time, and luckily these cars have ABS, otherwise they'll be slipping off. But traction control may also come to the rescue. Pascucci there, he goes a bit crossed up. Now he's actually giving the opportunity for Blenat to come through. It's a Grande move coming into the Grande curve. Who's going to make it stick? Is Blenat actually in front, and he cuts across Pascucci as the spray kicks up into the face of the second of the two Argentines there.
And watch the sheer cold determination in the eyes of Roman Pascucci in that camera on the left of your screen. He will be fighting incredibly hard to execute a comeback at the Curva de Ascari, which is going to come up in a couple of corners after the Lesmos. But there is a bit of a gap being pulled up right now by Juan Blenat. And that is brilliant, because as the track is drying up, drivers are realizing that the lines that were faster earlier are not that fast anymore. The lap times are dipping significantly, to the point that at the end of the last race, we saw drivers clocking in some lap times around 2 minutes 6s, 2 minutes 7s. Now, in this particular race, they're doing lap times that are as fast as 2 minute 3s, 2 minute 1s. In fact, if you're someone as good as Aaron Vasquez, you're clocking in 2 minute flats in that car at the top. 2 minute flats. He's literally 1 or 1.5 seconds faster than any other driver. But speaking of good drivers, Zampolini sends a move down on Cabral at the Ascari chicane, and oh, he does that with some confidence. That is a good one. But isn't it amazing, how the track is evolving and the drivers now need to be on absolute push mode for the next 6 laps?
Yeah, we're only just coming up to the halfway point of the race now. but it looks as though some drivers are settling into a bit of a rhythm. The likes of Vasquez, of course, we saw how he did a 2-minute flight as the fastest lap. Not that time around though, 2:01, but he's still maintaining a healthy gap in front of Blanard and Pascucci. Pascucci looking to get back. His fellow countryman Kulhabi is still managing to hold on to fourth, but for how long? Because there's Gustavo Ariel behind and Jackson Resende as well. Vizbiki looking into the inside Resende, so some drivers looking over their shoulders more often than not, trying to defend possession. That's very close. Oh, way too close for comfort between Vizbiki and Resende that time round.
Man, these drivers are taking things to the absolute edge right here in Monza. As if the rain wasn't tricky enough, they're just driving on the limit and pushing each other to the absolute bounds of what's acceptable in terms of driving. And these are drivers with some of the best iRatings on the grid. And you can tell, even though this might just be a casual race that they tend to compete in, it's not a world championship, it's not a race that pays as handsomely as any major championship like Bestwood. But still, the competitiveness is always at the very, very top in any AMX race. And that is what we're getting to see here. Incredible prize money on offer, incredible competition on offer. What's not to like about this championship? And I'll tell you what, it only gets better when we see battles that we're getting to see on screen right now. Here is the comeback. Roman Pascucci now trying to attack Joan Blanard, getting revenge for his move that got put on him a couple of laps ago. But that critical run, Amir, is just not there. Blanard is such a smart driver. His car positioning is immaculate.
Yeah, but again, equally as good as Blanard is Pascucci. He's really trying to hang on to the back of his fellow Argentine. But they're working together right now. Yes, slipstream may not be such a factor in the wet compared to the dry, but at least they can actually just hand them a bit. They can pull away from the third of the three Argentines in that top five. Kulhavi, who's got Ariel for company, who's got Resende for company, and Vizbiki as well. So really right now, they do not want to do anything crazy with just a handful of laps to go here to close off what has been a crazy round of racing here in AMX 10 in the GT3 cars.
It has indeed, and with only 4 or more laps left to go, this battle will only get even more fun as there is more fighting in the background. Familiar foes these are, Gaston Kulhavi and Gustavo Ariel, now trading paint with each other. Kulhavi has the run on Ariel for now. Will that be the case as we see these cars heading in towards the final few odd laps of this race? I get a feeling that Gustavo Ariel will really have to fight for this one, because in the last couple of laps, believe it or not, Gaston Kulhavi has been clocking in lap times that are faster, more battling, cars crossing the curbs. This is pandemonium everywhere, Amir.
Yeah, but that was Resende actually just going a little bit too squirrely coming into the De La Roja chicane. He nearly paid the price for it.
No!
Pushes Vizbiki out of the way. That nearly came a crumple between the both of them. As we saw just now, Ariel and Kulhavi actually swapping positions because Kulhavi got passed by Ariel, but Kulhavi managed to get by again. Up in front of Pascucci, gets in front of Blanard. That's crucial for him as well in his battle for second. But they are more than 4.3 seconds behind. This might just be the best they can finish right now. It's here, there, and everywhere. We just gotta keep up with so many battles are on track in the wet here. We did not expect the rain to turn up, but it has, and it has brought the race up in spades. Absolutely amazing driving from everybody all through the field.
And Aaron Vasquez right now is chilling. It might just be a wet day, but it's a calm wet day for him. He is enjoying right at the very front. Yes, his car is swiggling along a little bit here and there. And yes, he's having enough time for just him to wipe his mouth off, just relax a little bit, enjoy in the breeze. But that cannot be said for the likes of Nikolai Wezbicki, because he is under tremendous pressure from Jackson Resende. Resende has the run of his life. He's using the slipstream. Yes, he might be absolutely pelted with the rain on his windshield, but he wouldn't care. He chooses a line. It's the outside line, and the puddles are coming into effect. The rear end is as squirmy as a 911 GT3 Cup, and they make contact as well. Oh my days, thank the heavens. The rain is incredible. The racing here, Amir. I mean, how did he keep it clean after the rear end sliding that much?
Wow, I'm amazed that actually Rossetti managed to get it stopped in time to prevent himself from spinning out with Bizbiki. And Felipe, as well, credit to him, he actually was watching brief between all three of them, didn't whack the two of them right in front. But the battle's still on! Oh, Rossetti loses it. Really had to go full opposite lock to get it there. You can see on screen now he's changing his traction control settings or ABS settings to prevent that from happening again. As the rain now has stopped, dry lines beginning to form, and that brings in another factor in the strategy here. How well do you drive when the line is becoming more and more dry with wet tires that are actually going to overheat? With Ariel in front of Harvey now. As another thing to note, just now Vasquez made a mistake coming through the Parabolica. That actually allowed Pascucci and Blena to gain a second on him. So again, here, there, and everywhere, we're looking at every single battle possible for position. Out on track, here's Ariel. Ooh, that was nearly a loss for him, but manages to hang on to it. Now he'll set his sights on P3 with Blena about 5.2 seconds ahead.
Aaron Vasquez, in the meanwhile, is righting all the wrongs that he made in the last race. He's leading comfortably, and his pace is incredible. He's not as quick as Roman Pascucci, but he doesn't need to be with the kind of gap he has. But other drivers in the background need to be cleaner, because now Jackson Resende is in the middle of a fight once again. This time, it is with Dino Filippa. Filippa in that Red Bull car goes to the outside line. They are literally door to door as we go side by side of the main stretch in Monza. Take a picture of this, frame it on your wall. Ferraris racing in the rain at Monza. This is what dreams are made of, but they make contact and the dreams are shattered. There we go. Filippa spins out. He makes contact, and this beautiful battle comes to an end with tears. And the tears are not the rain, they will be genuine tears as Dino Filippa drops back down to P9. It was so beautiful till it lasted, but it's gone now. That battle is over and done with.
Yeah, I think Filippa might have actually gotten a little bit too squirrely on the brakes there. Touch Resende. I'm amazed that Resende actually hung on to that and manages to keep his position. But he has Martin Chico right behind him for company as David Zivok. Remember, he's the guy that crashed on the formation lap. He's without a bumper throughout the entire race, but amazingly, he's up in the top 15 and he will be able to win some money and points along the way. So he is in a tight battle between himself and Cesar Cabral, with now the battle up in front here. That is the one that we were talking about just now. Chico, Resende, and Bezbiki. Only about a second and a half separating between the three of them, and it's not over yet with about 3 laps left to go. 2 laps after this.
Seriously, David Givok with an incredible drive with no bumper at all. That would be such a big loss of downforce. But the guy can manage it so well. Imagine how good he would be with a bumper on his car. Incredible stuff. The kind of driving that we see here. It's so hard to choose a proper driver of the day because of performances like this. But I get a feeling we have more laps left to go to help us with that decision, because if Resende makes a move on Wishbitsky, which is what he's plotting right now, he could also be well in the contention. Watch what he does now. He chooses the inside line. Remember, the track is drying up. It is getting faster than it has ever been throughout both the races today, which means that the lines which used to be faster previously are not that fast anymore. With that said, Resende has made a choice. He's sticking to the inside line. Chico has a good opportunity on the outside. He will need a phenomenal run under the brakes, but that is impossible because the puddles Amir have caught him out once again.
Yeah, and the fact that Resende was actually defending that time around as opposed to attacking Bizbiki. He has to watch over a fellow South American right behind there as opposed to he was going to attack the pole right in front. Now he's left himself a bit open because he had a poor exit coming out of the Rettifilio, coming out of the Roja now. Will this be an overtaking maneuver for Martin Chico? Right outside he goes, checks inside, Resende loses it! He actually has been squirrely, but amazingly didn't collect anybody, cuts through the chicane, but he's gonna have to actually let that go because he cut through the corner, and iRacing in-game penalty system might just tell him that.
My goodness, it is literally boiling at Monza. The tempers must be flaring between all the drivers. What is it about Heat 2 that makes it so chaotic? We need to ask them once the race is done, because in this race, there's only been one word to define it. Pandemonium. That's what it is. It's been absolute chaos everywhere, and it's not done yet. because Martin Chico is on the tail of Nikodem Weshbitsky and he has tapped the back of Nikodem Weshbitsky. Weshbitsky, remember, at one point was running second in the first heat. It's now eventually turning out to be only a mid-pack sort of race. But can he hold on to that 7th place that he's really fought so hard to keep? Chico, knowing him, knowing the sort of driver he is, he's so thick-skinned, he's so aggressive. With only one lap left to go, he will try to find any opportunity he can to make a move on Weshbitsky, and that might just be on the outside of turn number 1 as well. What do you reckon, Amir? This is going to be one chaotic final lap as we come to the last lap of the second heat.
Yeah, let's see what Chico does here. He does take the outside line, but he runs the risk of going into the puddles, which can lose him braking stopping power. He does squirrely a bit on the braking, and he actually tags Weshbitsky around. That wasn't because of the puddles, that's because Weshbitsky tried to cover out the door. Chico was there. Unfortunately, he was tagged around. He might just go to the steward for that one. The beneficiary of that one was Dino Filippa. He gains a position out of that, but Weshbitsky will not be sent by that maneuver. He felt that he had the line, but he was tapped out.
More chaos, and even more chaos. What can we say about this race? It must be so disappointing to be Nikodem Weshbitsky right now after he got tapped out. Not tapped out, actually. That's a very resting word, that is. But after he got tapped away by Dino Filippa for the battle for P7. But that does only one by Martin Chico. My apologies, but that only does one thing. Chico keeps hold of P7. Filippa gets P8, and Weshbitsky will have to settle for P9. And with only 2 or 3 more corners left to go, I think we can all take a deep breath at last and say,
"Oh,
the battles
oh,
have
that's a
come
big
down."
one there." But just as you were saying that we need to take a deep breath, we can actually calm ourselves. Now it's a grandstand finish all the way to the line. Vasquez has actually bled out so much time. The guys behind, Kenny Holder coming through the final corner. He only has a parabolic left to go, and he'll be run home free. He does, but he had a major scare in between. Luckily, he kept it together. Now he can wipe his face off the square there. Across the line he goes. He takes it 1.3 seconds ahead of Playnat and Pascucci. A real grandstand finish unintentionally because he nearly fluffed it towards the end there.
He only went out and made it harder for himself towards the very end, but that's what the very best do. They set higher standards and higher bars for themselves, and that is what Aaron Vasquez has done against competition who have got even more iRating than him, against competition who are far older and have far more experience on the platform. Aaron Vasquez has demonstrated himself to be a wet race master. Well managed has to be the word for him, because he didn't win by the most seconds, but he certainly managed the race incredibly well to take home a big win. But we also have to give our plaudits to Gustavo Ariel, who once again has turned out to be a comeback king. Starting from P12 in this race, he's finished in P4, and that is 1 podium and 1 P4 for Gustavo Ariel, who was literally in P15 and P12 in both those races at the start respectively. Amazing action in the AMX 10 race at Monza, with rain really adding spice to it all. And at the end, finally, Amir, we can now take a deep breath and be like, this race was well worth the wait and well worth the time.
Oh, absolutely, Somil. I just cannot, put into words how amazing those pair of races were. And it really does live up to the bill as some of the best drivers on the platform duking it out to get up to the front and then some. We were treated to some really good races, and glad to say we had quality up through the field. Yes, there were some crashes, but nonetheless, we were treated to some bangers.
And the comment that we got to see on the YouTube chat by Site815 is so relevant. The AMX format really shows multiple driver discipline. It weeds out the drivers that aren't well-rounded. And think of it, the driver who's literally earned the most this entire weekend in terms of prize money is the driver who was the most well-rounded of them all. It was our very own Gustavo Ariel in P4. He got P1 in qualifying, P3 in the first race, and P4 in the second heat. Amidst all the chaos, he's been one driver who has survived it so well, and that is what this championship rewards. Oh, amazing racing.
Indeed. And, well, again, even that's why we had likes of Max Verstappen come through the race sometimes. He knows how fun it is compared to his day job right now. So, yeah, really does show that this league means business.
Okay then, that's the racing done. Why don't we speak to all the drivers in a short bit? We should do that very, very shortly. But firstly, we should take the time to also review the racing action between ourselves. I don't see sweat near our faces, Amir, somehow. I mean, it's weird, right? Because after a race as intense as that, I thought we'd both be losing our voices, we'd have sweat on our foreheads or whatever it might be. But at the end, we can all just take a big deep breath. And I know I've said that time and again because I'm losing my words because of how good the racing has been. Has it all settled in for you yet?
I think it pretty much has because you look back, step back a bit and say, well, we managed to survive that even through our voices. So again, credit to where credit is due. It had moments where it was intense. It had a bit of a lull, but then you had a crescendo towards the end where it becomes even more intense so that we could just, blow our brains off at how amazing the racing has been. And, well, I'm thrilled right now. I just have no more to describe. But the racing does deliver. AMX is definitely high up there as one of the best iRacing leagues that we've ever commented on.
Yep, it has to be indeed. And with that sort of racing action, there's no way to doubt it at all. And I have to speak to you about the rain as well, Amir. It threw up such a spanner in the works, right? None of us, I think the drivers quite clearly didn't know. We in the comms box didn't know, but that surprise clearly made it so much worth it in the end.
Indeed, and it's sometimes an equalizer, but at the same time, it also brings out the best drivers up to the fore. And in this particular case, we saw the likes of Vasquez, we saw the likes of Ariel, who literally were like they were walking on water just now. How well they were actually good in making everyone look like they were just standing still. They really knew the ins and outs of how to drive in the wet.
Yep, indeed. And why don't we listen to the drivers themselves about what the challenge was like? First up, we're going to have Gustavo Ariel, the pole sitter, the driver who got one podium and also P4 in this race, to hear his thoughts on what exactly went down in the race. Gustavo, can you hear me?
Yeah, perfect.
Quick audio check. Can you hear me, Gustavo?
Yeah. Hello.
I can't quite... there you are.
Okay.
Incredible. Gustavo, firstly, what was that race like for you in the cockpit? With the wet, it must have been so crazy, right?
Yeah, it was really unexpected, the rain the first race, to be honest. Pedro coming my shot to say the rain is going to come on the second race. So yeah, to drive in the rain is very fun, but of course when you start like P10 or P15, it's very difficult. You can see anything, and if someone spins, you just collect the guy. So I think I have a bit of lucky in the first race to overtook that guys on the outside sometimes. So yeah, the qualifying as well was really nice. I had a very good draft on my lap, so that's why I did the pole position on 1 minute to finish the session. So yeah, it's very nice to race here. Of course, we had like a Ferrari Cup today because of the officials. Everyone is driving it. It's very fast during the stint as well. So yeah, it's very nice. We finished the PASC championship here like 1 or 2 weeks ago. So yeah, it's really nice to drive Monza again and with the GT3s on this amazing league.
But Gustavo, one last question on the rain particularly. Does it really feel like this track actually gets better? Because we saw that iRacing said that the outside lines normally will become faster, just like in the real life. Did you feel that also being the case, where the lines that were normally be faster in the dry were now slower in the wet?
Yeah. I think it's very realistic. I think the rain, it's very, very nice to drive, and we saw a bit of transition from wet to dry on the second race mainly. So it was very tricky to find some new points to to drive with the car. So yeah, I think that's amazing. That's very incredible. And to overtake some guys, you need to go on the wet line, so it's a bit tricky to do some overtake. You need to wait a bit for the mistake of the guy in front on the exit of the corner. So yeah, it's a really nice situation, I guess, because you need to stay focused. If you lose a bit of concentration, maybe you can lose 1 or 2 seconds on your lap, because it's very sensitive if you get some curbs in the wrong way. So yeah, we can feel a lot of this. I guess if we drive for more 15 laps, maybe we'll be almost dry. So yeah, it's really nice to have this kind of transitions. And of course on the start it's a bit scary because everything's happening and you can see shit to be honest. So yeah, it's really nice to drive here. And it's a really crazy track on the dry tires, imagine on the wet tires. So everyone, I think, did an amazing race. Of course we had some incidents on the beginning of the races, but I think we did a very smooth racing the whole way. So yeah, thank you so much. My team Redline is very nice to see Florian winning on the first race, and of course we did the pole position as well. So it's really nice to finish with 2 top 5s here today.
Incredible to hear from you at the end as well, Gustavo. Well done. Congratulations on the result.
Thank you. See you guys later.
That, ladies and gentlemen, was Gustavo. Hopefully get to see more drivers joining in. Let's wait to see who else comes in for the next interview. We have Gael Valero with us. Gael, what a crazy race it must have been for you, right?
It was a mess. I didn't understand anything, and I tried something and I crashed.
I mean, that's just such a bummer, right? Especially sort of with the pace that you had all the way through.
I don't know which pace you saw. I didn't see any from mine. Yeah, it's just I have run like in the rain realistically 3 times when it released. Never touched it because I never had to. So yeah, it came a bit as a surprise today. And well, I rode with it. Wasn't amazing, wasn't terrible. We do with it.
How hard is it to be clean in the rain? And how hard are the puddles really? Because we saw so many cars actually see the rear end spin around under braking. Is it really that hard to control under braking?
So the first difficult part, let's say, is adapting to the track, because we had the drying track from qualifying that went into basically the wettest there is. So you basically have to switch your line from the dry line to the wet line, because the dry line becomes very messy. And that's maybe one of the things you saw regarding the tail end. And the battles, well, when you're on the wet, the cars are light, and when you battle, they become even lighter. So just a touch can completely turn a car or just completely mess everything up. So it's even harder, and your line is basically restricted to 1. So you have to be really brave for some.
No, but tough luck on today's races, Gael. But you still end up leading the championship. But thank you for taking out the time to speak to us at the end of it all.
No worries. See you, I guess, next week.
Absolutely. Gael Valero then, clearly not very happy with the action there, Amir, and can't blame him, right? It just got too messy at one point, didn't it?
Yeah, but then again, I'm surprised he could actually afford to put up a bit of a smile, because he probably was a bit having a bit of a smile, because knowing that the rain can be quite a big equalizer, but probably he wasn't really used to it. I heard just now, you heard as well, that he probably didn't touch the rain up until that point, and it was a nice experience for him. But then again, this is also a good experience to take away for the next race or any future runs that have rain on the surface, because it will be definitely a motivator for him to perform well for next time.
But yeah, thanks to the rain, we saw so much crazy action in the AMX 10 race today at Monza. But folks, that would be all from us right now. Join us next Tuesday for more racing action right here on the AMX YouTube channel. We'll be back with some more action with 3 more races left in the season so far. One on Tuesday, Saturday, and then on Sunday. But on behalf of everyone producing this broadcast, my name is Somal Arora. It's been a pleasure working with you, Amir, as well. And thank you so much for watching, folks. We'll see you on Tuesday. Bye-bye.
In your reflection, it's my intention.